How you doing?
I'm good. How are you today?
Thanks for doing this.
Not a problem. Happy to be here.
So for the listener, I met you at the gym.
Correct.
The gym's an interesting environment because you see people regularly, so you feel like you know them, but you actually don't. You just see them all the time.
Right.
And then we felt comfortable. I don't know who talked to who first, probably me. I saw you. It's like love at first sight now. And, we just started talking, and I thought you were a cool dude. And I was like, hey, I want to get to know this guy more. And I know a little bit about you. And so I'm excited to delve into your story.
Okay.
And so the way it normally works, it's just an oral biography of your life.
Okay.
So we're going to start usually at the beginning and then go through the years and then probably pick up on different topics or theories or ideas that you've picked up along the way. Sound good?
Sounds good.
So let's start with who you are, where you're born, and all that good stuff.
Cory Wright, born in Reno, Nevada.
Okay.
Been up here probably since 99, 2000. Went to college in California. I was fortunate enough to be able to play basketball.
Let's rewind before we get there.
Yep.
Let's talk about childhood Cory. What was 1 to 10 like?
Growing up in Reno, Nevada, 1 to 10, it's kind of weird. Being a person of color in that time frame, which was the early to mid 70s. 73 is when I was born, so I'm 50. 73 to 83, there wasn't a whole bunch of people of color there, especially in the neighborhood that I lived in. So there was tension, for lack of better terms.
So when people think of Nevada, they think of Las Vegas. How
Right.
close in relation are those?
8 hours north of
So it's
Las
not even
Vegas
anywhere
and
close.
Reno
Okay.
is Reno.
Okay.
Reno is kind of what we call like Little Vegas. Everything that goes on in Vegas goes on in Reno.
Okay, so they had the casinos, they got all
yeah.
that stuff.
Everything.
So it's just interesting that Vegas just marketed it better or more, or why do you think Vegas took off?
That,
and
like
Reno
in the
didn't?
40s and 50s, with the Rat Pack and all those guys, Vegas was marketed more. There was more money being put in there from people.
Yeah.
That was being put into Reno, but some of that money that was being put into Vegas filtered up north to Reno, Lake Tahoe. All that stuff is controlled by the same.
Yeah. So
people.
for the listener, you don't want to pay the Vegas prices, but want similar experience.
You can go to Reno.
Go to Reno. And
Yeah.
you can probably and then you have access to other stuff as well, like
Sure.
like the lakes and the mountains.
Lake Tahoe is an hour and a half away. There's great skiing up there with Heavenly and all this other kind of stuff. So there is things that you can get in northern Nevada that you can't get in southern Nevada.
Interesting. And is it just as hot as it is in Vegas?
Summertime ranges from about 105 to 110 sometimes. You do get 4 seasons in Reno, though, so there will be winter, spring, summer, and fall. You get snow. It gets close to 0, but then in the summertime, it gets hot. The climate is still a desert, so.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I could ever move to Vegas. It's just hot. It's too hot. You get 2 seasons, right? It's just hot and not as hot.
Right. I think that Vegas isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
The lifestyle, the things that go on there, the weather, for instance, it certainly isn't for everybody. I do have some good friends that live down in Vegas, but they don't live near the Strip. They're all outside of town.
All right. So childhood Reno, what was that like?
Everything was pretty much good, I would say. Of course, like any kid, I did dumb stuff and bumped my head a few times, but both my parents were educators, and the house was full of love and understanding and the ability to kind of grow into who you wanted to be. So home life and family life was really good.
And then did you get into sports then go into your teenage years?
Yeah. So I think I started playing basketball in 7th grade, made that team.
Were you taller than the average kid at that time?
Yeah, like in 9th grade, in 4th grade, my teacher was shocked because I wore a size 9 shoe. So that's when I first started to realize, okay, I might be a little on the larger size than the average person. But, and I'm not saying it to be arrogant or pat myself on the back, but even then, like playing sports with these other kids, I was always not just head and shoulders above them physically, but athletically, I could do things that other kids couldn't do.
Yeah.
So I started playing basketball in middle school, took that all the way through high school.
Did you enjoy it?
playing basketball.
Yeah.
Some of the greatest experiences I've ever had in my life came
Yeah.
from playing sports.
Yeah. So, started playing basketball in high school, it sounds like.
Yeah, middle school.
Middle school,
Yeah.
or you continued into your high school years. What was that? So my kids play basketball.
Sure.
And so they're like, we're going to make it to the NBA. Was that your mindset back then?
No. And it was because I really didn't have a mindset of what my future was going to be. I know that there's people who, some of them even chart where they're going to be 1 year from the next year. I never really did that. I didn't see what my life was going to be at any certain point in time. I was basically kind of living in the moment. Sure, being in the NBA when you're sitting in the driveway, I'm Michael Jordan. You're not Michael Jordan, but you have that.
I mean,
fantasy.
kids could dream, and so I let my boys, if that motivates them to go practice, right?
Sure.
And they have a little dribbling app, and it tracks them, and so it's like I'm okay with them dreaming that, because as long as it, like, for me, basketball, it's not even about basketball. It's about falling in love with moving your body.
Sure.
That was my goal as a parent for my children: is can I find an activity that they're willing to do that I don't have to drag them to do it?
Right.
And for now, it's basketball, so it's like great. They just finished their season, and so we'll see how it goes. But
so I think there's parents like you, and kudos to you because that's the right way to do it. There's parents that, to use your term, drag their kids to these things. Kid doesn't want to be there.
Right.
And it's very evident by the way that they play, practice, and their behavior throughout the whole process of that whole situations. So my kids play, and I've never been one of those parents who was like, you have to do this, we're going, even if they didn't want to go. I would never do that, because there's
is he pretty good?
Resentment, and there's walls that get built from that, right? So my son's pretty good. He goes to a local high school here. He'll be a senior next year.
How tall is he?
He's 6'5".
So that's pretty good height to be.
Well, if you're over 6'2",
Yeah.
you're in the upper percentage of humans.
Yeah,
So
just that height alone.
yeah, and he's got some athletic ability. He could play on the next level if he wanted to. It's not up to me though. It's up to him.
Does he want to?
He doesn't know that yet, and he's only a junior, so he hasn't really decided. He's got 5 to 50 million other things going on in his life that also have precedent. So I think that he's pretty well balanced with the way that he handles his sports and his social life and the other things that he has going on. I have a daughter who goes to another local high school, and she, from what I see, she has what I had. No knock on my son, love the dude, but she has what I like to call the love. Like, she enjoys the competition, she enjoys practice, she enjoys the grind of the whole thing, and she's pretty good. So when you have a kid who does that or has that kind of mentality, that separates them from the other people, right? And that's not just in basketball, but in life, realistically in life. If you are someone who enjoys the hard work and the grind and the process, you will separate yourself from the other people.
Right. Yeah, that's it's interesting to see how my boys, how they want to develop that skill.
Yeah.
Because hopefully you enjoy it, right? If you don't have the love for it, then it's like, is it worth putting all the time and effort if there's...
And nowadays it's money too, right?
Yeah.
AAU isn't cheap. You got the tournaments you got to go to. When we are parents and we go to these tournaments, we have to pay to get in.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah, so, like when I had to go pay to watch my kid play, I was like, why do I have to pay to watch my kid play?
Because they have to rent the gym. They got to pay the referees. The snack bar is over there.
Well, supposedly the money is going back to the school, is what they told me. And so when you're paying for yourself, your wife, and your 2 other kids,
it's $50.
Just to watch them get destroyed, you're like...
Yeah, and it's one game, right?
For the day.
You get your little wristband, right? Yeah.
And so did you do that with both your kids then? Like, when did you put them in AAU?
So I coached my son, I think it was probably starting in like 6th grade, from 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, maybe 5th grade, and some of his buddies. And my daughter started getting into it. So she probably started playing AAU or Boys and Girls Club. That's where it all really started, was at the Boys and Girls Club when she was like 6 or 7. And now she's in AAU here on a local team.
So she's on AAU in the high school team.
Yes.
Which one's more competitive?
I don't know if there's an answer to who's more competitive. They each bring different aspects. The high school thing, you see these kids every day. You build a camaraderie, a friendship, and a spirit of trying to achieve a common goal together, and you're there working on it every day. You play around here locally. We just were in Yakima for the state tournament a couple weeks ago. So those kind of experiences that she got to have, she'll remember forever. So there's value to that. The AAU thing is off-season stuff, right? So you get your training, you get your drills, you get all that kind of stuff. You play in the local tournaments around here, but the camaraderie and the team bonding isn't the same as it is on the high school level. They both have value.
Yeah. Yeah, I asked because I have to think through that with my kids, see how involved and invested in. And so Steve Kerr said something, I don't know, probably a few years ago when he was complaining about AAU basketball. Again, take it with a grain of salt, but he was like, in Europe, they don't develop players until a little older.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said they have less injuries because they're not starting at like age 6 and then putting them in high competition. So he said, A, injury, but then B, with AAU, because there's no season necessarily, they don't really care if they lose a game or not. It's just about the tournament, and it's about individual getting better because they want to get recognized.
Right.
Or he's like, and then the kids that get good enough get it to the NBA, and those don't really translate to team sport.
Correct.
They don't translate to like. So he kind of knocked on AAU because he was just like, I see the type of kids that they're producing and the mileage that they put on.
Yeah.
Because these guys make it to the NBA and they're already getting hurt, right?
Right.
Like the Ball brothers. And it's just like, why are these kids getting hurt so much? And it's like, your body only has so many miles on it.
True.
And if you're putting all that wear and tear at such a young age, is it going to have effect later on?
I would say so.
So I think about my kids, and it's like, yeah, there is a level like you need to practice, but do you really need to dribble the ball for 10 hours? Probably not.
You don't need to.
Yeah.
But again, there are kids who want to.
Right.
They want to.
When I say need, it's more of like, you want to find that point of, yes, you got to put in the work, but anything above that, it's the same thing in the gym. You only have to do so many reps to get to the point where you're getting the maximum dose. Anything above that is wasted.
Or what they call overtraining.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to navigate that with my kids.
So, only a suggestion. Put together some sort of like format, right? Of just minimum stuff.
Yeah.
And anything they want to do above and beyond that, let them go ahead and do it.
Right.
You don't necessarily want to put the brakes on them finding something that they really enjoy doing.
Right.
If that makes sense.
So here's something. They did the dribble up at. So they were going hard at it, and it gamifies it. Are you aware with that?
Yes.
So what happened though, and we would tell them like, hey, we're really glad you're doing it, but just know that you can do too much of a good thing. So he would be in school because he's homeschooled, and he'd be telling his mom, my arms are falling asleep. And we're like, what? And he was just dribbling so much that it had some effect on his arms. So we're like, okay, why we don't need to dribble so much? Because he would dribble like maybe 2 or 3 hours. We're like, great, he's putting in the work, but then he had to dial it back a little bit.
What is the detriment to it?
Yeah. So that's the thing as a parent I want to kind of help them navigate, because it's like, oh yeah, Dad, I can go do that, but I'm also trying to think long term as well. It's like, sure, you can go do the dribbling, but how much is enough? So let's go back to high school.
Sure.
Playing basketball. What other interests or passions did you have at that time?
Not too many, man. I tell people and I tell my kids, like, basketball was pretty much all I was concerned with. Grades, got by. Not a spectacularly good student. I enjoyed basketball, hanging out with my buddies, and the other type of stuff that teenage boys enjoy.
So when you were 18 and you're graduating, did you know what you want to do? Did you have big plans? Did you have plans of grandeur?
No clue.
And I like that answer because there's so many kids now, because they're young adults that are going to listen to this someday, and they have all that pressure and stress to be like, I gotta have it all figured out.
Right.
And it's like, no, you don't.
You don't.
And so once you graduated high school, what was your next?
Went to a junior college to play basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not real focused on my studies. Went there to play basketball, kick it, have fun. That was it.
How much practice would you be putting in basketball at that
During the
time?
season?
Yeah.
So we go to class, practices at 1:30 till about 3:30 or 4. Typically it was 2 hours. Go to study hall for another 2 hours. Get done with that. Go shower, go eat, go back to your room, watch TV.
Did they understand like nutrition and all that stuff back then? Like,
Well, yeah, I'm sure they understood it, but did the funding understand it, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So no, we got the same food and the same food vouchers that every other student at the school got. So
Yeah.
you go to the cafeteria, you have options,
Yeah.
right? Were we picking salads? No.
Yeah.
Right? We're picking pizza and burgers and all
Yeah.
that other kind of stuff.
Because now it's so everything can be so optimized now. Like
Right.
this is the elite diet that you need to have. Is
Right. Yeah, that comes with elite funding. There was no elite funding.
Yeah. So you played basketball in junior college,
Yep.
and then what happened after that?
Went to a Division II school and played about a year and a half there.
Mm-hmm. How'd you guys do? You remember how you did that season?
So let's see. In junior college, we went to the Final Eight in the state. We had a very good team my freshman year. We had a very good team my sophomore year. Didn't go to the Final Eight in the state. Transferred to the other school, and we were pretty much mediocre. I was part of a group of young men who were kind of along the same mindset, where we're not really here to get the education. Like we didn't. I'll just speak for myself. I didn't take advantage of the education aspect of it. We were there. I was there to play basketball, kick it, and do what young men do. And I was one of 10
Yeah.
that were like that.
Yeah.
So were we a bunch of jackasses doing stupid shit? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we were. Yes, we were. Did we pay attention in class? Did we go to class regularly? Most of the time, no. But were we at basketball practice? Absolutely.
Yeah, Chuck, Chuck from TNT, he said something interesting. He's like, and he got some heat for it, but it's like less than 0.00001% is going to make it to the NBA.
Right.
And so because of that, sure, play basketball, but he wants to get the message across that also take your studies serious.
Right. And I did not. I did not.
And, but so here's what's interesting. Could someone like you convince someone at your younger years to take it serious?
At the point I am now,
Yeah.
me now versus talking to someone me then,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So you think a version of you could have come back to 18, 20-year-old version of you and been like, hey,
You
take this serious.
you need to pay attention to this
Yeah.
stuff. I understand you love basketball, but you need to go to class and at least get C's.
Yeah.
Yes. Because this degree may be helpful for you later on in life.
Yeah.
Are degrees that important anymore? They're saying no.
Yeah, we can talk about college later in general, but I'm glad you're I'm glad you're optimistic to think that.
Yeah.
Because not everyone asks that question to is that optimistic to be like, no, you can influence young people. It's just how you influence them.
A lot of the things and the message that I tell people is based on my experiences. So through my experiences, I could tell them, here's what happened when I did this, and here's what happened when I did that. And should I have taken a left here, or should I have taken a right there? And through that message, it would ideally tell someone, go to class.
Mm-hmm. What was your degree in?
I studied criminal justice and physical education.
Physical education?
Yeah. So I thought I was going to be a PE teacher or a basketball coach or a juvenile probation officer.
Mm. All right. So let's talk about senior year of college. Did you still love basketball, or is it just a thing to do?
Yeah. No senior year of college. So we basically got removed from school. Me and another.
Because you did something.
Me and another teammate were accused of a crime that in court we were proven not guilty of. But because we were going to court every day for like 4 weeks straight, we couldn't go to class. got so behind in the studies, there's really no way to catch up. They effectively removed what they deemed as toxic students out of the university
Oh man.
with that mentality. So no senior year. I don't have a degree. I'm like 16 units short.
Mm. So let's talk about your mindset at that time. Did you get depressed? Did you?
I would say, first off, I was relieved that we were vindicated from the charges. I wouldn't say I was too upset.
I'm curious what the charges are, but we don't have to get into it.
No, it's okay. They charge us with grand theft body, which is if you attempt or do steal something off of somebody that's worth more than, I think, $300 is the grand theft felony limit. This young lady said that we tried to steal her bicycle. Looking at your straight face because that's the absolute truth.
That's funny.
Yeah. So
Well, that happened to the ball guy.
well, he was when he was
He actually did
overseas,
do
he
it.
actually
Yeah.
did that, right?
It's like, dude, what are you doing, man?
So the story is this. We were at basketball practice. We lived in an apartment off campus. There were some girls' basketball team members that also lived in an apartment off campus. Same building, same apartment complex. So we used to get rides from her to go home before and after practice. They practice on one side of the court. We practice on the other. We're waiting outside. So we're waiting for her to come out. Her teammate comes up on the bike. We strike up a conversation with her. We touched the bike. Nice bike. Nice bike. That's it. 2 days later, we're at practice. Campus police comes in there and arrests us.
Because she accused you and
Yes, me and
you were
another-
guilty
another
until
man.
proven innocent.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to jail with no shirts on because that day at practice we were shirts and skins, and we happened to be skins.
So how long were you in jail for?
About 3 days.
How was that experience?
It's jail. What do you mean? It's horrible. It's horrible.
I know. I won't say who it is, but the guy that I know, he was in jail. He's been in jail a few times on Christmas.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's not. He's basically saying like poor customer service. I'm like, bro, you're in jail. What are you expecting?
He's mad because he didn't get a Christmas cookie.
It's like,
God.
I was like, dude, he actually did the crime.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't feel sorry for you. That sucks because it's like you were guilty. They thought you were guilty, and it wasn't until
Turns
it all
out
came out.
years later, we found out that it was a whole political mess between the girls' basketball coach and our basketball
You're just
coach.
being used as a pawn.
Essentially, that was it. Yes, because she didn't like the environment or the type of kids that he was bringing in there. Were we those kind of kids? In an essence, yes. But were we criminals? Did we do any criminal activity?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
So, for the listener, how does someone like me or just people have empathy or sympathy for guys? When I say like you, just young men that are just trying to figure out life.
Oh.
Should it be some on the men to be like, hey, don't behave in such a way? Or should we just, the people who see that just be like, hey, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I think that, and maybe this will answer the question. I think that with young people, they need to understand kind of the pitfalls and obstacles and hurdles that are out there. And I, or the gentleman that I was with, didn't understand that by having this conversation with her, joking about it, it was an opportunity for something bad to happen. Should it have been? No, it's a casual conversation, right. But you have to be careful who you communicate with and how you communicate with people, because some people take it a different way than you're coming across as. And if they take it a certain way, things can go a certain way. So with proper, I guess, communication or education on the way life really is and the way that people are, and shit's screwed up sometimes. It's just the way that it is. Could that have been avoided? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. But I'm also thinking about just that young men, whether they're African American, white, whatever. I think sometimes we just think they're all idiots and they're all just fools. Mm-hmm. But it's like they're also just trying to figure life out.
Well, yeah. And I mean, the reality is a lot of people still try to figure out life when they're 50 and 60.
That is true.
So I think that if we, as adults, can kind of act and permit these young people a little bit of grace and patience and be like, a little more, all right, they're just being kids. They're not doing anything that's really that horrible. Are they being loud? Are they doing this as in music, this or whatever it is, right? So what?
Mm.
Who really has the problem?
Yeah. So let's get back into, so you don't do senior year.
Mm-mm.
Did you work during, did you get a job in high school or college? So you had,
like my freshman and sophomore year of high school, I did have a job. Welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order, please?
oh, you worked at McDonald's?
Yeah.
How long?
Not very long, man. I just realized that it wasn't for me. Probably like 4 or 5 months.
So it's super funny. I haven't talked to him in a while, but one of my good friends, he said that was his favorite job.
Working at McDonald's?
He worked there through his high school years.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, he said it was a ton of fun. So I guess if you have a really good manager, and you have good colleagues, I guess it can be super fun.
So I did it in between time of when basketball season was over to when we could start training again with our coach, which was early summertime. I worked at McDonald's.
Because if you really think about the concept of McDonald's, you're getting people that they could be smart, but you're paying them almost nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's low skill,
Mm-hmm.
but you built a multi-billion-dollar business off low skill, low wage people.
Yeah.
Just if you think about the business behind that, that's crazy. How often can you build a business paying people almost nothing? But
isn't that how America was?
Yeah. So he said he loved it, but just how they've learned to break down the tasks so they're so simple and take all the thinking out so that they just have to execute. Is essentially what they've done.
Push this button. That's all I need.
Right. And so they have everything. Like this guy that I know, before he went and started his business, when he already had a degree, he went to go work at McDonald's for a few months so he could learn the business side of things.
Sure.
So he wanted to know, how do I get people that are paid so little to still be able to provide we could argue if it's a good product, provide a product that people are willing to pay for.
Wasn't it a certain
McDonald's
type
has figured that out.
Demographic that they're looking for to do that?
Yeah.
It's not it's a certain type of demographic, you know what I mean?
But my buddy said he had a ton of fun doing that. Because again, if you're a worker there, you don't have to think.
Right.
It's not stressful.
Right.
Just do the thing they tell you to do.
Right.
Because all the thinking's already been done.
And be satisfied with a little more than minimum wage.
Yeah. So your one job was McDonald's. Any other jobs?
Yeah, I worked at Sears for a short period of time. I didn't understand what my role there was.
Well, that's a problem.
No one told me.
You're hired. You're like, okay.
I was like the back guy in the warehouse, right? When the stuff comes in, I'm supposed to take it off the pallets and take it out to the floor. So I didn't know that. It's like 16. I didn't know that. So apparently, well, not apparently, a whole bunch of paint came in, like 5 pallets. And, it was at the mall. So again, 16, I would just leave work while I'm on the clock and go walk around the mall. I might have gotten my ears pierced, gone to Spencer's and got some posters and this kind of stuff all while on the clock. Because I didn't know. So I came in the next day and they're like, why isn't the paint out here? Who was here last night? Cory was. Why did you? I didn't know. Come here, man. Come here. Take me off to the side. That was my last day at Sears.
So that didn't last very long.
No. Matter probably like 2 or 3 months.
That's funny. All right. So so you knew you didn't have a career at McDonald's.
It wasn't a warehouse worker for Sears. That's right.
All right. So let's go. I'm assuming at 22, that would have been 21, 22 would have been your senior year of college.
Yeah.
So let's go into the mindset of what mindset did you have at that point in time?
That's a pretty good question. Probably not much of anything except just getting through the day. How can I make some money? How can I do this? How can I do that? So I moved back to Reno from college and I got a job at the Olive Garden. I was a waiter there.
Oh, moving up. McDonald's to Olive Garden. There you go.
OG, Get some, what I mean?
Some tips.
Got some tips. Was doing that. And I was there for probably maybe a year and a half. Then I decided to move up here.
What prompted that decision?
I met a woman.
It's always the girl.
Right. So she from this area. She was down there on vacation. We started a romance or relationship, if you will. I would come up here. She would come down there. Eventually, she moved down there.
Was it love at first sight? Was that a thing for you?
I don't know if that's a thing. I wouldn't say it was definitely intrigue at first sight, because just to be quite frank, there wasn't women like that in Reno. So we're down there living. We move up here. I got a job in West Seattle over at the Keg. I was working there. We had an apartment in West Seattle off of Fauntleroy. Relationship blossomed and bloomed. Ended up getting married.
So once the whole basketball thing ended for college, did you stop playing basketball after that point?
Not so much. So I obviously played recreationally, and then I was fortunate enough to get a phone call to go to Yakima. In Yakima, they had what was called the CBA. There was a CBA team, Continental Basketball Association, minor league basketball, kind of a little lower than what they call the G League here. So they were called the Yakima Sun Kings. I got a call to go to a tryout there. Was there for about 3 days, and that's when I realized I had peaked. And there's people who are just better than you.
So let's talk about that. Is there anything you could have done to get to the next level?
Be 6'8".
So was it just more like, because there's the nature and the nurture,
Sure.
right? Some people just are going to be better than you no matter what you do.
Right.
And so some of it's not in your control.
Correct.
Height, obviously, but then what do you think if you were 4 inches taller, that would have been the difference? Or were they just at a skill level?
Yeah, well, with my skill level at 6'8", I would have been better skilled. But I'm 6'4", 6'5", with a pretty good skill level. And there were guys who were 6'4", 6'5", that had a better skill level. So I would have had to be taller, play a different position than on the wing. I would have had to come play in the post, right? At 6'8". Back then, 6'8" in the post, you were a big guy. Now in the NBA, you're a guard.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But yeah, a little extra height and probably some extra skills. But athletic ability-wise, I was pretty much just as athletic as anybody.
Growing up, were you always the best guy on your team?
No, I played with a guy.
Did that bother you?
No. Because I've never, and I never will be, I've never been a me first type of guy. I've always been a team guy, a we guy. I was more concerned about winning than my own stats. And I knew that by having the teammates that I did, specifically the one in high school, without him on our team, we didn't have as good a chance of winning. So we needed him. So he was the best player on the team. I was the second best.
Because that's, maybe my boys will listen to this at some point. So my 2 boys played basketball this year. They were able to play together, which was a lot of fun. And so my son, again, it's not that competitive, but he's put in the time. So he's the best player. I would say, I'm biased, obviously, but out of the whole YMCA league, from grade 1 through 10, he's probably the best player out of hundreds of players.
That's awesome.
Definitely in the 6th grade.
Okay.
6th grade below, 100%. I saw some of the 7th and 8th graders, and he's probably the most skilled, which is cool, right? See his little brother, and I'm trying to tell his little brother, my son, if you can learn to be a really good number 2 guy, you can have a really great career. But he wants to be the number 1 guy. And he likes the Warriors.
Yeah.
And so I try to relate it to him, but it's like, Clay knows Steph's number 1. But Clay still has a really good role. Now he's getting older and all that. But I'm just trying to get him to wrap his mind around. He's only 9, right? It's not like he has time to figure it out. But I'm just trying to plant the seed in him. It's like, it's okay not to be the number 1 on the team.
Well, I think part of the problem is with these younger athletes today, age, 6 to probably 26, is they would rather be number 1 than win.
Correct.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
Basketball is a team sport. If you want to be an individual and you want all the individual accolades, then go box, play tennis, bowl, Do something like that. But when you're in a team sport and a team environment, the we is greater than the me.
Yeah.
And it has to be that way, or you're not part of what's going on. Then you kind of isolate yourself and put yourself on an island. And that leads to a major thing, which is dysfunction among the team. Other kids, your teammates will see that. They don't want you out there. They won't. There's going to be walls built up.
Because my 11-year-old, they were on a 6th grade team. Some players, they can go get their own bucket, right? Some players, so my older son, he's good enough where he can go get his own bucket, but he makes the team better. And people like that.
Yeah.
So he's the point guard, he's the floor general. Yeah. On offense, he's directing the flow. And then on defense, he's telling guys what to do.
Sure.
You need a guy to do that.
Absolutely.
But you don't need everyone to do that.
No.
But he's the guy that people are willing to listen to because, A, he's better than them, but he doesn't like do it in such a way that's prideful. It's a rare skill that he has to be the leader, but also be the guy that people are willing to do the thing for.
Well, if you look at that dynamic, you can kind of correlate it to Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen.
Yeah.
Mike was a clear number one. Scottie was a clear number two in that system. When Scottie left and tried to be number one, he wasn't a number one.
Right.
The wins were what made him be able to even leave and have that opportunity. He was a number two.
Yeah, so I'm trying this next year they probably won't play together.
Okay.
So Lucas then he'll be on his own team. Mm-hmm. And then he'll see that like it's different when you're number one. More stress, right? Because they're going to target you. Or when you're number two, who gets all the stress? Right. The number one guy. And then the number one guy, because he got all these buckets because his brother would give him half court passes, give him easy layup shots. Yeah. He was able to benefit.
You shine because of what he's doing.
Right. And so it'll be interesting. I hopefully they can play again one more time because it's like they saw the camaraderie out there. Like they were feared in their little community because they're like, oh, we got to play the brothers. Like after games, parents would be like, are these guys AAU?
Yeah.
Because we'd go out there and just crush these teams. And it's like, and that's what I'm trying to instill in my kids. It's like, you guys have a connection that most kids don't ever get. Because you guys have that brotherly connection. You guys get to go practice.
Right.
So the older son's willing to do all that, but the younger one's like, no, I want to be my own. So maybe when they're older, like they'll figure that out. I can't force that. I can't force them to play together, but it is interesting to see that.
There's golf.
Yeah, that dynamic. So we'll see how they progress as they get older, and hopefully they can play again together. Hey, it's easier for me when they have to go to one game. Right. But it was a lot of fun because they just go out there and crush everyone.
It's a blast.
And it's it's fun for all parties involved.
Yeah,
except for the losing.
Yeah, but at the end of the
day,
I don't know if they do this anymore, but the losers would still get a trophy and you'd still get your orange slices and your goldfish and all this stuff. And
my boys, we don't play that game. We don't play the participation game.
No, because that's not life lesson type material.
No.
Right?
No.
Right? Come on. You come in third place, you're the third loser. Stop playing around. You don't deserve a trophy. It's absurd.
So mid-20s, you tried out for the basketball thing. You realize, like, I'm not happening. I'm not that guy.
Yep.
Was that hard to accept?
In an essence, yes. But as I was there doing the tryout and all that, I watched it all unfold. So I kind of emotionally processed it while I was there. It didn't last long. So I guess this is something that I'm pretty good at, is I'm able to compartmentalize things such as emotions, like on that situation, handle it, it's done and over with.
Yeah.
So did I think about it for very long? Yeah, maybe a couple of days, and then I went back to life. At that point, I started working at Salty's on Alki, and we played basketball a couple times a week, so I was still hooping.
And you're better than the average guy, so that's probably fun to go.
Still to this day.
Yeah, it's fun to go beat up the Joes who's out there.
Yeah, it is. It's fun to be able to know that you are athletically far superior than the average person who goes to their desk job and says, I hit 2 3-pointers, right? Yeah, okay, cool. You didn't make it past 8th grade, right? But what school did you go to? What team did you play on? Oh, I didn't play. Okay, well, cool, buddy. How's that spread?
Are you in any league right now?
No.
When's the last time you were on a league?
It's been probably 20 years. So, I just was playing recreationally, and it was probably like 15 years ago. I was working for a mortgage company on the east side over there in Kirkland, and there's a couple of other mortgage dudes that worked there, and we would go play basketball a couple times a week. And one day we went to that park. I think it's called Peter Kirk Park, right across from the Wendy's, and 85th is right down there. And we were out there hooping, and we were playing a game called 21. And if you know basketball, 21 is a game that you play when you don't have even numbers,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there was three of us. We're playing 21. I'm on 19, and if you shoot that free throw and you miss, you go back to 13, right? So instead of doing that, a smart guy who's played the game a lot throws the ball off the backboard hella hard back to himself, and then goes scores the bucket. 19 plus 2 is 21.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. Scored the bucket, landed, and tore my patella tendon.
How old are you?
38,
Yeah.
39, somewhere around in there. Yeah. So that's when I was like, all right, we're probably good on this. So I'll still shoot around once in a while and mess around with my kids.
Yeah, so injury forced you into realizing.
Early retirement.
Yeah, take it. So Nate, a guy that my boys play with.
Mm-hmm.
So my kids are homeschooled, and one of the one of the concerns non-homeschool parents, anyone will be like, well, how do your kids stay social? And it's like, and here's what I always tell them. If you get a bunch of dumb kids together, are they going to get dumber or smarter?
Well, yeah, if you hang around 4 dummies, you're the 5th, right?
Right. And so they're like, so like when my 4th grader, we put my kids in football, the flag football. And so he had fun with that. And then some of those kids had brothers in the 4th grade team. And so they invited my 4th grade son to join that team for a couple games. Mm-hmm. And so he went to the first practice and he came home and he's like, those kids are fools.
Their behavior?
Their behavior.
Sure.
Because when he plays with me, he's playing with adults, he's playing with teenagers.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't interact with 4th graders that often. And he's like, I was like, yeah, that's how 4th graders act. You know, they're just sitting there picking their nose, not taking it serious. Because when he plays with me, and we play 2-on-2. It's me and this kid that's 20.
Mm-hmm.
We're just out there having fun. We're not out there complaining. We're not out there fighting. It's just having fun. So when he had that experience with just 4th graders, he was like, they're fools. I was like, yeah, you're welcome for not putting you around that all day.
Right.
Because they're able to think higher level.
Yeah.
And so their best friend is a 38-year-old who used to play Division II basketball.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because they only play with people that are better than them. They don't play with their peer group unless it's in a game. Their mindset's so different. Mm-hmm. Like when they go shoot threes, because like Nate's really good at threes, to them it's like, well, why wouldn't you always make your threes? Or if you play against 4th graders that never make their threes, that would be, so it's interesting. You, without realizing it, you associate to whoever you're around.
Right.
Right. So if you're just hanging out with 4th graders all day, you're going to be in that mindset of
you're
dummies.
4th grader.
That's dummies. So I say that to people who are like, how can you homeschool your kids? And it's like, my kids are doing great.
Right.
And they know how to interact with adults, and, you know, they enjoy that.
I think my question to him, and, you know, you don't want to be an a-hole about it, but why do you care?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're not your kids. Worry about your kids.
Yeah. So mid-20s.
Yep.
You moved up to Olive Garden. And you're living with your girlfriend at the time?
Living with her, yep.
Were you thinking about having kids, getting married, or were you just kind of in the moment at that point in time?
Moment.
Because the reason I keep bringing this up, because I know I have people in their 20s, and I want them to hear this, to be like, you don't have to have all the stress in your life to feel like you have to have life figured out.
Correct.
Some people, there's some, like, life is so, there's just a lot of different paths, right? Some people from a young age have that specific goal, and that goal can carry them their whole life. Like, I want to be an astronaut, so everything they do will take them to the astronaut. Or I want to be a doctor, so everything they do. But not everyone has that path, and that's okay.
It's absolutely okay.
And so that's kind of the message I'm getting, or just hearing your story. You didn't necessarily know what you want to do in your 25,
No.
and that's not the end of the world.
No, I don't. I've lived my life up until probably now, not knowing what I wanted to do until I kind of feel like I found my purpose, which is to help people, like genuinely help people.
We'll get to that, how you got to that
And
point.
I think that's kind of where I'm at with it. So I didn't 20s, 30s. I was just going through the motions, working in an industry that I thought was going to pay the bills and be.
Did you have a desire to become like a millionaire or billionaire or super, super wealthy or rich? Or
No.
Because I feel like that's the message that young people hear now.
That's a social media stuff.
Right.
That's
If, Grant Cardone, if you're not a Billy, you're a waste. And it's like,
well, how many Grant Cardones are there?
right. But that's the message. Or if you're not a million by 30, everything you've done is a waste. And I think I almost got caught up in that. And now I realize I'm happy. I don't need like, money is a tool. We need it, right? To pay. You got to do the stuff, but I don't listen to the videos about money as much as I used to, because I'm just like, you know what? I don't like. It's cool if you get it, but then 99% of people don't actually want that life.
Right.
But that's the message that
I think if you can come to terms with the fact that peace of mind and happiness, you can't put a price tag on it. It's priceless. There's no dollar amount for that. So if you can come to a phase in your life where you're lucky enough to be able to do something that generates money, enough money, whatever it is, to where you can pay your bills, take care of yourself, and you're happy and peaceful, and you have what I like to call like an easy life, that's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
That's the goal. And going out there every day, grinding your ass off, busting your butt, and being stressed out and not the best person that you can be, all in pursuit of the mighty dollar. That's a bad way.
Yeah, because there's a cultures like the hustle, the grind, and sure, there's a period of time where you got to put in the work.
Yeah,
right.
Of course.
But I would also push back a little bit and say it's not worth sacrificing certain things.
No.
Such as health and family.
Well, what's that? He who some sacrifices himself for the world, something gains nothing, or there's a saying, something
Bible verse about that.
Bible verse. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's not worth it.
It's funny, I'm still friends with my old boss, and we were texting, and so he played basketball growing up, so I was kind of showing him some videos for my kid. And so we were talking about work, and it's like, it's funny, men will, from 20 to 45, they'll slave themselves over their job, sacrifice their health, sacrifice their family. And then they'll hit a certain age, maybe sometimes in their 40s or even 50s, and by then they've destroyed their health so much, they've destroyed their relationship so much, that they then spend the rest of their life trying to recover the damage that they did, chasing that dollar. And
a lot of times they're doing it alone, because the damage that they have done to some of these relationships is unrepairable.
Damage to people or their health. And then they have health issues.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not, some things, like, there are little sacrifices you have to make sometimes, like, you don't like sacrificing ice cream or whatever, right? But then I think sometimes people get into the mode of like, I don't need friends, I just got to work on this. And it's like, sure, there's a select few that maybe should have that lifestyle.
The lone wolves.
Right?
Yeah.
But I don't think that's, for most people.
I think as human beings, we're not designed to be solitary creatures. We need socialization. That's what we're supposed to do, is be around other people, share ideas, share thoughts, share all that kind of stuff. That's how we grow as people, right? So like through what you're doing with this podcast, you're giving people information. You're sharing. That's what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to just be on an island all by ourselves.
Yeah, there's a select few that can do that.
Right.
But if we all try to do that, you're going to have a lot of miserable people.
Well, yeah, and the ones that do that, now outwardly, they may seem as if
they usually are miserable, yeah.
Deep inside, man, they hate shit. They hate it.
Yeah.
They're not happy.
Late 20s, what was that life like?
Moved up here probably 29, 30, 29, somewhere around in there. Was working downtown Seattle at a Time Life call center. So Time Life is like the place where you used to get CDs and books and all that stuff.
I guess I don't even know what that is.
It's called, okay, so
CDs.
right, encyclopedias. What is that?
Wikipedia.
Or a CD.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Encarta?
yeah. So probably the most famous one that they ever made was called Body and Soul. It had all the R&B hits from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and all that kind of stuff. So I was in a call center with a bunch of people making the phone calls, selling that product to people over the phone.
Was that your first exposure to sales?
Yes, on that kind of a level, a sales level, yes. So then I think I was married at that point in time, or about to get married. I was about to get married. And I met friend of a friend, dog's brother's uncle type situation, who was like, I'm in the mortgage business. You can sell stuff. I can tell us by the way you talk, because we were having a conversation over a couple beers. And he was like, you should come see what I do. Cool, no problem. I went and hung out with him for a day, saw what he did. He gave me a phone.
How did you meet this guy?
He was ex-wife's friend's husband's brother.
So I'm going to pause you there for a second. Here's what I find just from doing these podcasts with people and hearing their story, is sometimes people, they're so afraid of, they don't know what to do next, or they're so afraid of taking the right step.
Yeah.
And what I find a very common theme is in the living of life, you will happen, like it's crazy how common it is. You will either have an experience or meet someone that you did not plan, which will then affect the rest of your life or the next step. And so you only get to that point if you're living life.
Correct.
So if you're a listener and you're hanging out in your mom's basement, you're not living life.
Correct.
If you're playing video games all day, you're not living life.
Correct.
You have to go do the life, and then in the doing, you get your experience.
Correct. So,
and I didn't even know that happened to you, but it's such a common thing where it's like there's unplanned things that you had no control over that will then change the trajectory of your life.
So there's two aspects to what you're saying. The first point that you made about living life is absolutely correct. There are people who don't have shit happen, who just breeze through life and nothing ever bad happens to them. That's because they're not trying. The only time you can achieve anything or get better is by trying, kind of liken it to a baby learning to walk. 1 step fall, 2 step fall, 3 steps, I made it to the couch, 4 steps, I made it to the table. Next thing you know, I'm back and forth. Trying. It's real easy to sit at your house all day, play video games in your mom's basement, and just have everything be real cool. Well, that's where you're going to be. You know what I'm saying? So that's to that point. The second point about meeting people and putting yourself in situations, I think the universe puts us in spots at certain point in time. There's a reason you and I are here. There's a reason that you and I met and we had our initial conversation. There was a reason why I met that guy that got me into the business that day.
Yeah.
Things happen for a reason, right? If you're not prepared or you're not willing, you're not going to be able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, it'll pass you by.
Prepared, open mind to it, and willing to take advantage of what's in front of you, right? You have to be able to do those things. So I did that.
So he introduced you to
the mortgage business.
What year was that?
Probably 2000.
So this is when, we'll get to the crisis, but this is when things were still good.
Yeah.
And so how was that initial?
It was a tough, probably first year trying to start my business.
You're in your 30s now, right?
Yeah, probably early 30s. Slowly started to get some momentum and doing deals every month and that kind of thing. So I stuck with it for a while. Then later on,
this is you, when you say mortgage, you were a lender?
I was a mortgage broker. So I worked for a company that had probably 10 to 15 mortgage banks underneath it. And we would help people by selecting the correct bank for them. A broker.
Yeah. So are you the one helping with the finance, like helping them get the loan?
Yes, that's exactly.
And then you make commission?
1000%.
So I don't know much about this industry. So are there some back ends, like for the listener and myself, tell me about the gray areas or the dark parts?
There's not so many gray areas anymore. There used to be gray areas where as a loan originator, which was what I was, I could charge you a certain amount up front and say the interest rate at par, which is the rate that an individual would get without paying to buy down the rate, or taking a higher rate to get rebate. I'll explain that in a second. Was, let's just call it 4%. That was the standard rate. right? So I charge an origination fee called $1,000.
So let's say the house is today's $500,000. Let's go from there.
Typically, we would charge 1%, so that's $5,000 upfront paid to the loan originator, and say that the par, the lowest interest rate that you could get, would be 4%. Okay. If I could convince you to take 4.5%, I could get another point on the back end, so another 1% of that $5,000. So for that one deal of a $5,000 home purchase, if I could get you to take 0.5% higher.
But why would that person take 0.5% higher?
Well, sir, your credit is this kind of situation. Your loan to value is a little higher than it needs to be. So the lenders put you in this criteria. Your interest rate's going to be 4.5%.
But you could have put them at 4.
Your interest rate's going to be 4.5%.
But you don't tell them.
What?
But you don't tell them.
Huh?
So we're going to talk about sales. Maybe this is the part we're going to talk about it.
Okay.
So, you know who Andy Elliott is?
No.
So he's a guy, he's the next Grant Cardone when it comes to sales.
Wait a minute. I do know who that guy is. He's on YouTube.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
He's been blown up.
Yeah.
And so it's gotten me thinking more and more about sales, the concept of sales, manipulation, kind of what you talked about. There's a lot of gray area. And so this kid came in the other day in the sauna. The sauna is an amazing place. I don't know if do you ever go to the sauna?
No, I don't want the wristband. No. I don't want the bracelet.
There's no wristband.
Bracelet. You remember when Chuck got the bracelet from the guy in the sauna? Edit it. Anyway, Charles Barkley was in a sauna in Arizona, and they talking to this dude, and they're in their towels, and Chuck's like, "Hey, that's a nice bracelet." And the guy's like, "Oh, you like it? You can have it." And Chuck was wearing the bracelet the next day on NBA, whatever the show is.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Where you get that bracelet at?" And he was like, "Oh man, I got it from my buddy in the sauna."
Oh, but does it mean something, the bracelet?
It was like one of those
I'm like a
hematite or one of those crystal.
Oh, okay.
Bracelets. Yeah. Anyway, okay.
Anyways, I have no, I'll keep it. But I have I have fun conversations in sauna. The sauna was probably part of the reason I started this whole podcast thing, because I would just listen to old guys talk about interesting stuff. So, anyways, I get some young kids in there sometimes, and we'll start talking about the concept of sales. But so I had this thought. So if you're a professional fighter and you know how to fight, and you go out in the street and someone attacks you and you beat the crap out of them, you can go to jail because your arms were lethal.
Yep.
Because they're like, you should have had the restraint to not beat the crap out of that guy, even though he provoked you. So you can actually legally go to jail, even though you were defending yourself. Because they would have said, hey, you actually knew how to do in such a way that wouldn't hurt the dude. Where if I don't know how to fight and I get in a fight, I won't get in trouble. So that guy has knowledge and power, and the law would say you should have used it in such a way that didn't hurt the guy. So when I'm thinking about Andy Elliott and guys like that, are they good salesmen? Sure. But really what they are is they understand human psychology and they understand manipulation. And so they're someone that is highly, highly skilled, and they know how to play, I use different terms, but we'll keep it G-rated. They know how to play mind tricks on someone to get the result that they want.
Right.
So I was talking about that, and it's like the ethics of it, right? Because it's like, because I do watch some of, maybe I'll tag him in this, because he posts it all now, like all his training videos, because he now he's teaching not just cars guys, but just anyone in sales, he'll teach you. But it's like, he keeps saying things like, the reason why no one likes car salesmen is because they're not professional.
Right.
It's like, no one likes them because they're sketchy. They don't trust him. So now he's trying to teach people on shake the hand this way, do this, do that. And it's all really just comes down to manipulation, right?
Yeah.
So the ethics of that, and it's just like, I don't quite know where I sit with that, because if you're highly trained in something, then of course you're going to get that sale. So is it on the person who's ignorant to better educate themselves, or is it on the guy? If you are the one with knowledge and power, you should have the restraint. And this is where I'm thinking out loud, where it's like, when I go to my doctor, I'm hoping he's not trying to pull one over on me.
Right.
Because it's like, dude, I don't know about this stuff. That's why I'm coming to you. But when you go to a sales guy, it's a different game. Because they're like, oh, this guy doesn't know anything. I'm going to do this stuff. So let's talk about that. I'm just thinking out loud when it comes to sales and manipulation and
I think that
education.
The restraint word is applicable. I think more than anything, and this is for sales, period, you just need to talk to more people, right? So yeah, you can get the extra 5K from Henry Johnson, but why not go give Henry the best deal that he could possibly get, right? That's the restraint aspect, and then go get another deal. So a lot of times in sales, especially in some of these higher ticket items, we're focused on the one deal, right? We don't have 5 deals. The problem with that is if that one deal fails, you're screwed, right? So it's better to have more deals. So yes, you should show restraint. You should be more ethical. You should have handled it correctly, and then got more business. So like for real estate, because I did that for a while, my whole goal was, it's a real simple game, just to tell you the truth. You just have to talk to more people than anybody else.
Right.
It's the same thing with the mortgage thing. It's really the sales in any sales, no matter what.
Usually the sale itself is easy. It's getting the person in the first place.
All you have to do is talk to more people than anybody else. If you can do that, you're going to win at that game. So a lot of times, it's glamorized that it's easy to do sales. Sales is one of the hardest jobs in the world, no matter what you're selling, right? So people see it and they see the success, but they don't see the work that those people put in, right? The hours that they put in. But restraint is probably a good word that a lot of people in that profession should have used. And then we were obligated to use that because the federal government stepped in and said, you can't do this.
But that stuff's happening almost people. It's hard for people to trust salespeople. Now they've changed the term. Oh, it's not a sales guy. It's they now that no matter what industry you're in, it's no matter, they don't try to label the guy as a sales guy. They try to label it as, repackage them as a educator or whatever it is. But it's like, ultimately, if you understand that there's a way you can pull one over on someone, and then you do and be like, well, it's on that guy, he should have known better. Well, how's that guy supposed to know better?
Yeah, no, that's a bad way to go about it.
That's what so that's like, I don't know if I dislike Andy or if I like him. It's just more of, you're a highly skilled, trained fighter. And if you go talk to almost anyone, you will destroy them. Just like a highly skilled fighter can go destroy 99% of people that he comes in contact with, because he's highly skilled.
Sure.
And so you should only really now these are big ticket items. I don't really care if it's 2 millionaires and they're just fighting out, cool. I don't really care. But I'm more concerned about just the little guy. Yeah. He was just like, dude, I just want to buy a car. Right. So the way he sells, he's very slick, because I listen to him. So I have sales experience as well. So what do people hate people hate buying cars in general, right? Because it's such a tenuous, right? The guy's trying to sell it as high as possible, and the guy wants to buy it as low as possible. Yep. But then, so that's contentious. But then it's all the extra crap they want to add on. And I was listening to Andy pitch it. He's like, no, you're transferring the risk from the customer to the company. And so they've convinced themselves that they're doing the right thing. So let's say I met Andy earlier today and confronted him on that. In his mind, even though there's plenty of articles out there that would say only 0.01% of the people actually use those products that you sell, in his mind, no, I did what was right for the customer. And that's where it's great, because it's like, in his mind, he's 100% convinced that I did the right thing. Right. Where if you really showed the customer the real data that shows how many people actually use that product, right? The aftermarket crap that you buy with the car, it's less than 1%. Right. So did you do the right thing? Well, for the guy who filed the claim, may be happy, but for the other 99 people, they'll be like, why did I do that?
Well, I think that's why, it's one of the reasons, or maybe the major reason, why there's these online car marketplaces where you don't have to go to a car lot anymore. The Carvana, and there's another one.
A lot of them are going out of business, which is funny.
But so you don't need them anymore.
So do you look back at that time now when you were doing that? Do you feel bad that you did that?
I
you
didn't
think
do it to everybody, so let's not go into.
You're like, it was
let's
terrible.
let's not go into it like that. Did I do it? Yes. For the majority of the business that I did, though, it was straightforward, good business, morally and ethically sound.
Well, I'm not even saying what you did was wrong.
It was wrong.
Why was it wrong though?
Because I didn't give the people let's just call it that one situation. I didn't give that person the best deal he possibly could have gotten. Instead, I looked at padding my pocket.
But someone would argue that doesn't matter.
It matters to me. It didn't matter then. It
Yeah.
may have mattered then, but I can just stuff that away and throw it out.
Yeah.
You know, three beers later, it's all good.
And that was the conversation I'm trying to have with these guys so I met a dude the other day who was 23 about sales because he actually came from the car sales. I was like, perfect, this is awesome because everyone hates car salesmen.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you're 23 now, but know that we talked about like the whole Wells Fargo scandal. And it was like, those tellers initially didn't want to do that.
Right.
Are you aware of that scandal?
Yes.
And it's like, what happens is if you have a manager telling you to do something that, I mean, looking back on it, it was totally unethical, right? But so I was trying to warn him, like, if the longer you're in sales, the more you're willing to violate your conscience.
Right.
Because initially he's like, oh, yeah, I want to be totally upright. I want to be totally blah, blah. And I was like, cool. But then you'll see, oh, if I just would have done it slightly different, I could have made this much money. So you do a little violation of your conscience. Then you do it again. Then you do it again. And
because the first one is the worst one.
Yeah.
The first one is the worst.
And so that was the conversation we were having in the sauna about that. And afterwards, he actually thanked me for having the conversation. Yeah. He's like, man, I'm so glad because people don't have those conversations at all.
So I think if you're in sales and you're in a situation where you could take advantage of people, more of what you should be doing is, would I do this to my mother, my brother?
Right.
Would I want someone to do this to me? And if you can operate your business on a level like that, you're still going to be successful. You don't need to go ahead and do that to people.
Yeah. So you, when you did the few times you did that, you couldn't sleep well at night. It did bother you.
It did bother me. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And not everyone has that moral compass to do that, so they'll just keep doing it. That's why you have Wolf of Wall Street. That's why you have guys like that, because they're just like
the Jordan Belforts of
or you're just like, hey, it's on them.
Right. Buyer beware is what it's called.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's a concept I've been thinking through as far as sales, and should the buyer become an expert in all things? No, because it's not his job.
There should be a level of trust that this is a professional who has license and been through background checks and isn't going to screw me
Fiduciary,
over.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like
fiduciary duty.
It's like when you go to the bank or you go to a financial advisor and they're advising you, but all they're really doing is pitching you on these stocks or this mutual fund, because that pays them the most fees.
You would hope that that's not the way that they're doing it.
But it is, unfortunately.
I agree.
Right? So if you go to some of my owners actually work for these banks, so be careful. But if you go to a certain company and you're like, hey, Mr. Advisor, because they think they're advisors, but they're not.
Right.
They're just selling whatever product that they want to push because it has higher fees. So that's
sell 15 of XYZ product this month, you'll get a knife set, right? Yeah. You get the spiffs, you get the kickbacks from the company because they want to move that.
Right.
Right? We're going to give you something.
Yeah, I mean, I worked at Verizon. I had to sell phones.
Right.
And I never had to sell the iPhone because people came in for the iPhone. But I really liked the Google phone.
Yeah.
And so I worked hard in selling it, but that's because I believed in it.
Mm-hmm.
I generally wouldn't sell someone away from an iPhone, but because I had both Samsung and Google. So I feel like in my scenario, I was actually educating the person, and I was like, dude, I have the Google phone. Yeah. So that's different, because there is an education element, because ideally in sales, you're educating someone so they can make an informed decision.
Yes.
That's ethical sales.
Correct.
You came in, I'm going to inform you on everything, and then maybe help you, because I'm the expert, I can help you make an informed decision that's going to be best for you.
Right.
If I get benefit from it, cool. I don't necessarily. So like Google had things where like if you sold so many phones, we'll hook you up on the back end.
Right.
Which I don't think that's necessarily unethical.
No.
Maybe it is. Maybe I don't know. That's up for debate. But for me, it's like, I will educate you. You had a Samsung phone. I used to have a Samsung phone. Here's a Google phone. I'm not just trying to sell you the Google phone for the thing back there. I'm actually showing you the Google phone because I actually like the Google phone.
Right.
And I educate them on it. So that's different because like, I'm not saying all salespeople are bad or sales in general is bad. It's like you said, fully educating the person. Because if you would have educated your client, think the 0.5% higher so I could make more commission, they would have been like, no, thank you.
No, right. You're absolutely right.
So you would just be like, hey, 4.5%. And they'd be like, okay. But because they didn't know any better. So that's where you should have shopped around. And someone else would have been like, I can get you 4. Because that's how
4.25, and then they'll take the 2,500 instead of the 5.
Because that's how I feel when I go buy a car. I'm like, is this the best interest rate you can give me? And you never know.
No. You have to assume and trust that they have your best interest at heart.
Yeah, I feel like it now because I lease my cars.
Yeah.
The last time I leased my van, they didn't even they were just like, I think at this point now, they can tell a customer when he walks in, like, we're not going to get one over on him. So the dude just came out and he's like, dude, he just printed it and was like, this is the price. This is what it is. I was like, cool, I can do that. Yeah. But other customers, they try to.
Let me go talk to my manager.
Yeah. They're like, dude, don't play that game.
Texting their girlfriend around.
Yeah. We're not going to play all that game. So I think I finally I can have some level you're not going to play games with me.
Sure.
But unfortunately, most people don't get to that point where sales it's a gamemanship. Mm-hmm. Mortgage. Go back to that. So how long did you do that for?
So I was a loan originator, which is basically a mortgage broker. Then I got to move up in the industry, became a branch manager. So I managed a couple branches.
So then you're
a mortgage company.
What did your job essentially do
I was called a producing branch manager. I would do a couple loans. I would hire people and basically build an office.
When you were the broker, what was your best year? Like, how much money did you make?
Oh, in the 6 figures.
Yeah. And so they saw that and they're like, hey, we want to.
They saw that. They saw the production. They saw that I could talk real good and I had good game. And they would be like, okay, let's see if we can build a branch.
Where were you getting your deals from?
There's different lead sources that we would pay for. There used to be this thing.
Was agents a worthwhile lead source?
Agents? No, not really. And the reason is because most agents who are doing business have their guy already.
Yeah.
So your spiel to them would be like, hey, well, just in case Jim falls through, let me be your backup guy. Give me a call. I'll be happy to help you out. Blah, blah, blah. They don't call. The best source of business that we found was what's called bankrate.com, where you would advertise your interest rates on there and you'd always be 1/8 to 1/4% lower than anybody else. The phone would ring, you'd quote them right then and there, get them pre-qualified and have them out the door in like a 20-minute time frame. You'd have them approved for a loan. That was what we were doing with the majority of our business back then. Paying for leads.
Yeah. So then became a manager.
Yep.
Making good money.
Yep.
What was life like at that time for you? Do you enjoyed that? All that?
It was good at the time. I mean, life was pretty good. I was single, just doing my best.
I thought you were married.
No, I got divorced in 2009. Yeah, so I was single.
Do you want to talk about any of that?
I mean, we can glance over it.
So here's the thing. I have friends. Maybe they listen, and let's actually talk a little bit about marriage.
Okay.
So I'm married.
Yep.
But marriage is tough.
Yeah.
And my friends don't have great marriages.
Yeah.
And so it's like, are there things, so for someone that's listening that's thinking about getting married or wants to get married, are there things you can look out for your partner before you get married? Or is it too hard to know whether that relationship's going to work out?
So the main thing that I think you need to do when you're engaged in a relationship and considering marriage is make sure you know who you are. So I would fully encourage people to seek therapy, get a good grasp of who you are, how you operate, what makes you tick, what you like and what you don't like. And if XYZ person doesn't fit that bill, don't do it because they're never going to. It's never going to work. You're going to be trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and that's not a good place to come home to.
Yeah. Know who you are. So here's I like that. Know thyself, so that if you're still trying to figure yourself out and then you add someone else to the mix.
Oil and water. It's a mistake.
My thing is, I like to use the word framework.
Sure.
If you can have a framework, if you can apply this to almost anything in life, fitness, whatever, job, health, whatever, marriage. But it's like, if I'm going to help work with someone that thinking about getting married, be like, have a framework to how you're going to deal with conflict.
Sure.
Because if you go the typical route, they fall in love, never have conflict, we just love each other, we're in the honeymoon stage. Then you get married, you're still in the honeymoon stage, then you have your first conflict.
Yep.
But then you don't have rules of engagement and how to deal with that conflict.
Right.
Then it's game over.
Right.
Right. And then you're just conflict after conflict after conflict. And then it's like, then you get divorced.
Right.
So that's why if I were to advise someone, I think that's really good. It's helpful to know yourself, but it's hard to know yourself in your 20s.
Well, that's why you need to get therapy, especially if you're going to be considering getting into a relationship with someone on that magnitude of a level. And I'm not talking couples therapy, right? She needs to go do her own thing, or she doesn't. If you tell her, Sarah, I'm going to get therapy so I can be right for us, not just for now, but in the future, and she laughs at you and says some bullshit, don't marry her, because she doesn't support what you want to do. She's not behind you. She just showed you a major red flag right there, and you didn't even have to sign any paperwork to find out about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So go to therapy, figure out yourself, get a game plan and an idea of who you are, what you're all about, how you handle conflict is very important, right? Because you can't control what anybody else does. If she wants to act a fool and do whatever, that's fine. What are you going to do then, right?
Yeah.
How do you react in certain situations, right? That's what you got to figure out.
Yeah, I think, for me, it's, there's a lot more to marriage, but it's like conflict resolution. If you don't have a way to deal with that, that's going to cause a lot of issues. So have the rules before you get to that point in your marriage where you're having a lot of conflict.
Well, yeah. So ideally, you're in a situation with someone who is willing to cooperate with you, right? And there's people out there nowadays that just won't cooperate. It's my way or the highway.
Right.
You see that, run. Go the other way, because it's not going to change. That's just the way that they are, right?
Yeah, and it's like when you're in that love stage, honeymoon stage, you're not thinking about this stuff.
Oh, you have blinders on.
Yeah, you're willing to overlook all the little, like, I should be careful how much I say about my friends, but it's like, it's like, he's like, looking back, all the red flags are there. I just didn't know.
Right. I've been in a relationship like that.
He's like, I just didn't know.
Yep.
He's like, so now when I see someone that's interested in getting married, I tell them it's hard. Don't do it.
Right.
And then that partner's like, why are you saying that? Because he's like, it is hard.
It is hard.
And yeah.
It's a hard relationship, and that's why you need to work on the most important relationship that you'll ever have, which is the one with yourself, right? That relationship in marriage is cool. You're going to spend a lot of time with that person, but the person you spend the most time with is yourself. So know yourself best. So
I want to get your feedback on this. So some people, I'm actually thinking of someone in mind. They're so first of all, he has really high IQ, which is blessing and a curse. So it's like if someone's extremely beautiful, blessing and a curse. And so when someone has really IQ, they don't fit in with the average.
Right.
Again, blessing and curse, because if you just want to be average and you're really smart, it's tough. And so he's going through this. He's early 20s, 22, 20, he's around 22. And it's like he's going through this trying to figure thyself out. But if you become so introspective, you can literally lose yourself.
Right.
And it's tough when you're really smart. So what I told him, and I'm curious to get your input, is sometimes I learn about myself by understanding just how humans in general should function.
No doubt about it.
So then it's not so much about me. That's why I love listening to podcasts about how to get muscle, how to get fat, human psychology, because then I'm able to fit myself into that versus like, who am I? Just me. It's like, no, I'm more interested in learning about just how humans function.
Mhm.
Yes, there's different personalities, different styles. And so that's what I was encouraging him. It's like, dude, you're sometimes if you get so focused on yourself, that's really, I'm not saying you become a narcissist, but it's just very selfish. But it's like sometimes you can learn about yourself by just interacting with other people,
Sure.
but also learning just about like human psychology. Like if you do this, you'll get this response. If
Sure.
people do this. So I'm curious
I think
how do you actually get to know thyself? Through
my main thing looking back was I wish I had done the work to know myself before I did it. So like with your buddy who's 22, it's fine to do the work. Don't get lost in it, right? Don't get in the weeds and bury yourself in it. But it's better to do it now than when you're 50 or you're 40, right?
So it sounds like you've been to therapy.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that there's value in that because you're never, I would say there is never a perfect time to get married. You're never perfectly going to know everything.
Right.
Right. There's no perfect time to have kids. There's no perfect time to get married. But at some point, you do have to pull the trigger. But if you're a total complete mess and you get married to someone else a total complete mess, the odds of that being successful probably pretty probably pretty slim. So would you? So let me ask you this: how long were you married for?
7 years.
7 years. So I'm sure some of your friends at that point were getting married and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How many of them also went through divorces?
Well, that's a good question.
Was it more than 50? Less than 50?
Less than 50%.
So what do you think was because I'm sure you talked to some of those buddies, the ones that made it, what do you think they did differently?
I don't really know. And the reason is because we don't talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Dudes.
Yeah.
Hey, bro, tell me how you made it successful in your marriage for 20 years. I've never said that to another man in my life.
Yeah.
Right. It's just not the way that we as men communicate. Not that it's right or wrong. It's just not something that we do. Right. You're married. Cool. Right on. Things are good. Kids are great. Awesome. Good to see you. You know what I mean? And that's it. We don't have those kind of conversations. At least I don't.
Yeah, I'm trying
circle of friends that I have, we don't have those.
I'm trying to break through that with myself and with other people. Obviously doing this, you things like that come up. But I think that's why people like podcasts, men and women, because it's like they're too afraid to say something, but if they hear someone else talking about it, then they can learn from that.
Sure.
Right? That's why I like listening to a whole range of people. But so lasted 7 years. Was there anything particular that you learned from that marriage?
Yeah, just one blanket statement that what people see as normal isn't normal for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to dig deep into that for you?
It's up to you.
No, it's fine.
We can go into it as much as you want.
We all have experiences in life. We're raised certain ways. Things go on in our lives, and it may work out the way that it seemingly is good. And because of that, we think that that's normal. And then we go into different situations and different relationships in our lives and try to implement that same type of mindset, thought process, activity. And it turns out that the person that we're doing that with doesn't see that as normal, right? Because what one person sees as normal is not necessarily normal to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. So here's, again, I want to be delicate, so you don't answer whatever you're comfortable with.
Gotcha.
But so how long of the marriage was good and happy? I say this because I know a lot of people are going to listen to this that maybe going through what you're going through. Hopefully I never have to.
Yeah.
Right. So asking for a friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so once you knew the relationship was rocky, was it like, hey, let's fight through this? Was that your initial
initial attempts at that?
Let's try to work through this. Mm-hmm. And then once you knew it was coming to an end, was that like a sense of relief? Because I literally have friends at that point right now where they're like, maybe this just needs to end.
The hardest thing that I ever had to do was go and file divorce paperwork. Once I got that done and I knew that it was served, there was a sense of stress relief and like, okay, we can move on with this. But then shit just gets worse, to be honest with you, because then you got to go to court. Then you got to deal with child support.
It's so crazy. It's so easy to get married. It's like 2 seconds, sign the paperwork, and then but to get divorced, it's like again, if you have kids, it gets complicated.
Yeah.
So you shared kids at that time?
Yes, we had 3 children. I still do. That's 3 kids from the marriage.
So that's what if you don't have kids, it's probably not as complicated.
Oh, it's bye. Peace.
Yeah, but once you have kids,
it adds some things to it. Right?
Yeah.
So like I always tell if anybody asks, like I got 3 wonderful blessings from that marriage.
Yeah.
And that's a fact.
So once again, without getting specifics, like when you made the decision to end it, was there something a thought that you had or an incident where like when were you like, okay, it's not going to get better?
Sure. So I had come to the realization that the life that I was living was toxic. I was doing toxic behaviors. I was drinking. I was staying out all night. I didn't want to come home. I was not a good husband, truth be told. And I realized that what was the common denominator there besides me, it was what I was experiencing when I was around that situation. So interestingly enough, once the divorce happened, I move out, I'm doing my thing. All of a sudden my lifestyle changes, my behavior changes. I stopped doing those things. And then I started to figure out, okay, it really was that situation was absolutely toxic, not for me, just for me, but I'm sure it was for her as well. Like she couldn't have been happy, right? She couldn't have been in a good place with the marriage. So there probably, I can't speak for her, but I would assume there was probably like a sense of relief and some calm that came into her life from it as well, because it was not a healthy place for either one of us to be.
Yeah, because I think a lot of married couples, they stay in the marriage, it's toxic,
Yep.
And then it's like, we got to stick together for the kids. But is that really what's best for the kids?
The worst thing you can do.
Because
you don't want your kids to grow up in that environment.
Asking for a friend, it's like, it's like, because that's where they're at right now,
right?
And they're just like, something's got to give. And so, in one instance, it's like, all right, go to marriage counseling.
Yeah.
But there's a guy like they listen to, John Deloney, and so you can call in. And talk about just whatever issues you're going through, and then post it on YouTube, and then other people can listen to it and laugh about it, right? But he says something really interesting about marriage in general. When your marriage gets to a point where there's so much toxicity and conflict, or let's say the spouse cheats or does something that's just very detrimental, he's like, one thing that he said was that couple has to decide, you don't necessarily fix it, you create a new marriage with that person,
right?
Which was really powerful, because he's like, yes, you deal with what caused that, like if someone cheats or whatever, but the couple has to come together and almost get remarried again to create a new marriage. But that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so you can do that, but it takes both parties to do that.
Yeah.
And if both parties aren't going to do that, that's when you say, okay, it's not like, if you're not willing to come to the table and I'm not willing to come to the table, and we're not willing to create a new marriage,
right?
Then that's when he's like, then you need to go your separate ways.
I think that you're right. And that's a great way of thinking about that. Create a new marriage, but are we creating a new marriage with the same people?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you're going to be the same,
right,
then it's the same marriage.
Right. When the work is the therapy that you need to change, but it's not changing to go to prior to the toxicity. It's to change for the better.
Correct.
So, but it's creating something new, and that was a new thought process he introduced to me. Was sometimes in marriages you have to recreate yourself,
right?
And that's where most people aren't willing to do. So then, yes, you do split because you're like, yeah, I'm not, and then you did recreate yourself, and she probably did as well. But you didn't do that together.
Well, and the thing is, when there's kids involved and you're in that situation, well, let's just make it work for the kids. That's bullshit. Don't do that. because I guarantee you, your kids don't want to grow up and have that sense and that aura floating in the room of anger and disdain and all that kind of stuff. And what your kids really want at the end of the day is for you to be happy, both of you to be happy. So speaking solely for myself, my kids would not be in the situations they are, the young people that they are, if I was still married. If me and their mother were still married, it wouldn't be the way that it is.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
So I'm going to clip this part and send it to asking for a friend.
Okay.
So you can listen. But yeah, I, being married, I have a lot of married friends, and it's like, yes, you can work on your marriage and make it better, but it takes both parties. And it's a lot of work.
The problem is that some people, I don't need to change. I'm fine just the way I am.
Right.
Cool. Go ahead. But we're not built like that. As human beings, we are meant to evolve. We are meant to grow. We are meant to get better. So there's a word that I like to use in a sense of this whole conversation, and the word is still. So still has a couple definitions. The first one is still, meaning not moving. So you can be still in that relationship. You're still not moving. You're not getting any better. You're not doing anything to improve. You're not doing shit, right? Or you're still mad about this, still upset about this, not getting over stuff. You can't be still. You can't be still in relationships, and you can't be still in life. You have to be moving, flow like water, Bruce Lee, right? You know what I'm saying? Move around, go with things as they come at you, right? You can't be still.
So, comment I want to add to that is not, and I want your pushback on this thought. It's me thinking out loud. Another word is progress.
Yeah.
But you don't always have to have progress in every area of your life at the same time.
You can't.
Right. And so, as long as you have some progress somewhere in your life, right, I think that's okay as well.
Well, you're completely right, because there is no magic pill. There is no flip switch that we can flip that all of a sudden we do a 180 degree
Right.
turn and we're all of a sudden a different person. So years ago, I read something about, try to be 1% better every day, and in a year or in a year, you made the 180 degree turn.
But what I'm trying to say is also, like, let's talk about men in general.
Okay.
A lot of men, and I guess women now, like the working person, like the guy that's working 9 to 5. So I think about my life at Verizon when I was gone 10 hours, because it's an 8-hour day, but you have an hour lunch break, and you got to factor in commute.
Yeah.
So it's a 10-hour day. And so the average person like that, they may not be getting progress at work, but then they don't have things outside of work. They don't have hobbies. Because I talk to my friends and I'm like, okay, your work life sucks. Your marriage sucks. Mm-hmm. What other things in your life do you have that you enjoy?
Right.
And they usually say nothing.
Nothing. That's the answer.
And it's like, that's a problem.
It is.
Because I'm going to, my wife and I agree, not every moment of the day is our marriage amazing, right? That's what we strive for. Mm-hmm. But it's just like with work, not every day is amazing, but there's at least something in my life that I can look forward to and enjoy.
Sure.
And like for us, we enjoy fitness,
yeah.
Right? So we get progress in fitness and doing that. But I look at guys and it's like, dude, if you have nothing outside of, especially if you're married, if you have nothing outside of your work and your marriage, and you have no hobbies and you have nothing, mm-hmm. You're going to be pretty miserable, because at some point in your life, maybe most of your life, those things aren't that great.
And they're going to go away. Eventually, they're going to go away. Eventually, someone's going to die. You're not going to work anymore. What are you going to do?
Yeah. So I tell my friends that are like, dude, you have to have a hobby outside of something that interests you outside of work. But I get it. It's hard. I think back in those days when I'm so fortunate that I get to have all my meals with my kids. I get to do all that stuff, and I know that's not normal. So I try to put myself back in the days when I was at Verizon. I still had hobbies.
Yeah.
I worked out. I would wake up super early and go work out. I had something outside of just my marriage and my relationship and my work.
Yeah.
That I had something. So when I say the progress thing, it's like, okay, maybe you're not making progress today on your relationship or today on your work, but you can make progress on something else.
Because every day there's opportunities to get little victories.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. You can't expect to win the game in one day, but you can do or win the war, but you can win battles throughout the day, right? Little victories throughout the day. That's all you really want.
Yeah. So once the divorce happened,
Yep.
depressing, sad, what was that emotion?
Sure, there was sadness, sense of failure, and then that goes away. It goes away because you have to continue to live, and you have to continue to.
And you have the kids, so you got to man up.
You got kids, so there was a sense of independence that I gained from that, and basically,
how old were you at that time?
I would say, let's see, 2009.
We can do time frame, late 30s, early 40s.
Late 30s, call it that. It was good for me because I got to start from scratch.
Yeah. So is that when you got into therapy?
No. That was when I got into trying to figure out myself via books and YouTube and all this other kind of stuff, and did that for many, many years. And there was progress made, little victories, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't until in 2020, 4 years ago, that I really got into therapy, and I went for about a year and a half.
Well, let's talk about that later. So you're divorced, and so now it sounds like you're putting more deliberate action into self-development through. Is that because you want to be a better dad, or you just
wanted to figure out better ways to deal with things that come up in life? Number one, yes, be a better dad, be a better person, try to start existing on more of a high level.
Do you remember any of the interesting people that you came across back then?
Oh boy.
Who inspired you?
I picked up, I got into Audible, and I picked up an interesting book called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, which is a great book. It's about, like we mentioned earlier, pitfalls and obstacles that come into people's lives, and that they're put there on purpose to challenge us, right? Go left or go right. So that was good. As far as like interesting people, the usual stuff, your Tony Robbins, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing really remarkable that I can say for sure was a life-changing piece of information. Was there information in these things that I was listening to and watching? Yes. Was it helpful? Yes. Did it help me? Yeah. But nothing that was like a light bulb moment. Oh, that's it.
Yeah. So let's get into early 40s. What's that? So how long did you do the mortgage stuff? You went through the mortgage crisis at that time?
Yeah, that wasn't bad for me.
Really?
No, because of the way that our business model was set up.
Because you were given that extra 0.5%.
They cut that down. That's when all that happened in 2008, 2009 with the Dodd-Frank Act. No, because the way our business model was set up, we were constantly bringing in business. It wasn't,
because a lot of people did fail.
Absolutely, they did.
But you guys had built in such a way where
our infrastructure was solid to where we were getting people interested in buying homes and getting a loan every day. So the volume wasn't the same, but it was more than what a lot of other people had. So we were doing okay.
Hmm. And then how long did you do that for?
I got out of that business. I would say probably like 2000. I started my company in 2016.
So you started your own mortgage company?
I started my own hard money lending company. So in Washington State, you don't have to have a specific license to do that. So a hard money loan is like for something on an apartment building, shopping center, anything that's a rental property, 4 units or more. I was a broker, and I would go find the money for the people. So that's what I was doing for a few years.
Did you enjoy that?
It was just, no.
So what made you get out of what you were doing before? I think I asked for myself. This time I'm not asking for a friend, but ask for yourself. When you're in a career, how do you know when to switch gears or to try something else? Is it boredom?
Opportunities come up. The universe tells you stuff. So the universe told me from going and being in the regular mortgage industry and all of the phone calls I was getting from people who wanted to buy multi-unit properties, apartment buildings, things, shopping centers.
Yeah, you
things
couldn't
of that
get
nature.
traditional loans.
You can't get a traditional loan for that. Don't worry about that. There's an aspect of this business. Now, how can I make this my own and do this? Well, you got to create an LLC and you got to get a business name. So I did that, put a website together, all that kind of stuff, put ads on Craigslist, and was getting phone calls just about every day for something. So that was okay. We did that for a while.
And I'm sure the commissions are different on hard money loans. They're a little bit more lucrative.
Yes.
Ethically lucrative.
1,000%
Yeah.
ethically.
And you're also dealing with a different type of clientele where they know, like if that clientele, they know everyone's got to get paid and
They're
get
seasoned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're like, they know, like,
It's
hey,
not their first rodeo. So they would tell you, okay, so here's what I want, Cory. I want to buy XYZ property. You can charge me a point. I'm not paying more than that. And then give me all the regular title, escrow fees, and all that other kind of stuff. No problem. Write it up.
Yeah.
Send it off.
Versus if you're just buying a home, buying an investment property is different than buying a home, and they understand everyone needs to get paid.
Correct.
Everyone wants a piece of the pie.
Correct.
So you did that. Didn't necessarily love it, but it was an interesting opportunity.
It was the next phase of my real estate journey. So I did that.
Did you do that by yourself, or did you build a little team?
I had another guy who was working with me, just one other guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I did that until 2019, and then I got my real estate license. I started doing traditional real estate, helping people buy and sell homes.
Are you still doing that?
No, I have my license, but I pretty much hung it up. It's not with the company that I was with.
Yeah.
It's still with the state. That's the way Washington works.
Yeah. I actually have my license. I don't know if you know that.
Okay, cool. So I disassociated myself with the company. My license is hanging in Washington. I did that in January, late December, and done with that.
Did you enjoy the sales part, or you're like, over that hustle?
One of the shittiest things about real estate is dealing with people. And the aspect of dealing with people is the greed aspect of it, right? It's a completely me-centered thing. There's zero loyalty. They don't care, right? I'm not going to deal with you unless you give me the most money. So you could do what's called buy a listing. You go in there and tell Mary, I can sell your house for $750,000 when there hasn't been a house that sold for more than $400,000 in 5 years in that neighborhood. But Mary says, I trust this guy. That's bullcrap, right? So the ethical aspect of things is not the highest in real estate. There are great agents out there. There's a guy I worked with who is top notch. There's a couple of them actually. But more than anything, it was just dealing with the people who, in theory, you're helping them, but you're not. It's solely a greed type basis.
So let's get into that. Since you've been in the real estate world for a while, what separates, two different questions.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what separates a good real estate from a bad agent? What is that like for the listener? It's like, okay, here's what I'm looking for when I'm looking for an agent. How do I know?
You're just dealing with the cross section of people. And if you take 10 people and you line them up, 3 of them are going to be not great people. 7 of them are going to be great. So in the state of Washington, all 10 of these people can be real estate agents. So you're going to have 3 that are just scumbags. They're just not ethical. They just do anything. They lie to people. And because of those 3 people, it tarnishes the reputations of the other 7 people. So it's very hard to earn somebody's trust that's looking to sell their house, right? Because they heard that so-and-so agent screwed over the XYZ person. Oh, you work for the same company. Yeah, but that person doesn't even show up to the office. I don't even know who they are.
Yeah, that's what's tricky. It's like the way it works, they're not employees. Right. They just have association to Windermere, but it's like, dude, however that guy ran his business is not how I run my business.
Correct. Try explaining that to someone who's talked to 10 agents and didn't like what 9 of them has had to say, right? But she liked the 10th guy who said that they'll sell her house for $250,000 more.
Right.
So a good agent, in my opinion, is someone who works hard every day and understands that it's one of the hardest jobs in the world. It really is. Again, with social media and all this kind of stuff, you only see the commission checks, but you don't see the work that goes into that. Like the people who are really good at real estate, they're on the phone, they're grinding every single day. And because of that, they have a level of professionalism that helps them be successful. I was starting to get that. And then I started to realize I lost 2 listings. And I lost the 2 listings simply because the people didn't listen to what I said. And I told them what it was. I told them how much their house was worth, what it was going to sell for. But no problem. I'll put it on the market for what you want. But let's have this conversation about what we do in 2 weeks when we don't have XYZ amount of showings. Let's talk about the conversation that we need to have in 4 weeks when we don't have enough showings, right? Then we need to talk about lowering the price. Okay, no problem. We can do that. So we sit on the market, for 4 or 6 weeks. Had open houses every weekend in this one particular situation. So I'm in Burien every weekend. Where do we live, right? She fired me, for lack of better terms, because I told her it's not me.
Right.
It's the price, right? I know it's worth this.
I know I'm a pretty face, so it's
right.
Not me.
Yeah, Anyway, she had an exorbitant price on it. No problem. We take the listing. I had the conversation with her. And then it turns out it sold for even less than I told her it was going to sell for. But she went through 3 other real estate agents besides me. Listed it with them, fired them. Listed it with them, fired them. Listed it with them, fired them. And then the 4th guy finally sold it. 5th guy, right? So it's just the lack of loyalty, lack of care for other people. It's a me type of situation.
Right.
And it didn't make me feel good. Yes, I made money. Yes, it's a profitable business, right? But my soul counts too. And I like to feel good. I like to be happy. So
and you're at a place where it's like, ultimately I want to do, like, there are phases in life, right? In your 20s, sometimes you do things you don't like. We're not going to talk about the ethical side, but sometimes you got to go get your elbows dirty.
Correct.
Right? But in your 50s, hopefully you've learned some lessons that you don't have to necessarily do that unless you're trying to do a complete reinvention. And so I'm kind of facing that now in my mid 30s, where it's like, in my 20s, did I do things I didn't enjoy? Sure, but I was also young. I was dumb. I needed that. But now I'm like, now I just want to do things I would, not because I'm lazy, but just like, I want to put myself in a position where I do things that I enjoy. So that's I think people need to hear that.
Figuring yourself out, knowing what makes you happy and how you work and what's going to bring you fulfillment. We need money, no doubt about it, right? But you don't need to wake up and feel like crap about going to work. And you don't need to go back home and feel like crap about going to work. It's no shade against the real estate industry. That could be in any industry.
Yeah.
I know a bundle of very, very good real estate agents that are top-notch people, right? And I'm not saying this stuff about that industry because I wasn't successful. I did business, okay? It just didn't make me happy. So I changed.
Yeah. And then, so we don't get too much into it, but it sounds like you do insurance sales now. So you went and got your insurance license?
Yeah. And I'm not selling anything.
Yeah.
No.
You're educating them on.
Well, people call in and they have a certain situation, and all I do is tell them about another situation. And if they want it, I sign them up. They don't pay me anything. The company pays me something. I don't pressure them. There's no pressure. There's no nothing. At the end of the day, I have so many of these people say, thank you so much. You've helped me out. I'm in a much better place. No one ever said that in real estate, right? No one ever, and I've never felt that way. So not only that aspect of being emotionally fulfilled and happy for doing something that is good, which is helping people. I get paid for it. My phone doesn't ring with bull crap from people being upset about this price, or an agent who's mad about a sewer line, or someone saying that their loan got canceled or whatever. I don't have any of that anymore. My phone rings and I talk to people on a daily basis that I want to talk to, that I love and love me. That's it.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's good for the listener. Also realizes as you get older in life, you don't have to chase the dollar. There's always another way to make money.
You can always make money.
Yeah.
But don't sacrifice your happiness for it.
Yeah.
And I learned that. That's part of the process, right?
So let's get into the therapy part. Sure. How did you get into that? Because I think a lot of men avoid therapy.
Yeah.
So it's cool to hear that from you, and I'm interested in your experience with that.
So I dealt with a woman who was toxic, was bad.
This is a different relationship?
Yes, for 4 years, from like 2000.
You didn't learn from the first time?
Dude. We're dudes, right? With shiny objects. Hey, look at that.
Before we get into that, I had this theory. I was like, You think after your first relationship, if you're going to get married a second time or have another serious relationship, you kind of know what to look for.
Right.
And that was a working theory I had. Like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But
so I'm this way. I made decisions. I don't blame, like people say, oh, this girl was like this or this dude was like this and that's why it didn't work out. You know, it worked out, it didn't work out. You made the decision, right? Take accountability. So
that's what I teach my kids.
Right. I made a decision to get involved with a woman that had red flags written all over her. Did I see him at that point in time? No, like your buddy, right? But there were subtle signs. It was like, hold on a minute. But at that point in time, I was going through something with the loss of my dad. He was on his way to dying. He had cancer. So
How old was he when he passed away?
1945. This was 72. 72, I think. Yeah, 1945, 2017. She came into my life while that was going on, and she gave me something emotionally, some support, some caring, some love that I needed. That grew into a relationship. So while I'm getting blinded with the warm and fuzzy stuff that she's feeding me to soothe my aching soul, we've developed this relationship, and I'm missing everything that is like danger, danger, danger.
Yeah.
So she was a dangerous woman, and had a track record of being this way, and not the most mental health conscious individual. So when you deal with someone like that and you're in a relationship with them for a long time, when you end that, they say it's like detoxing from a drug to your soul. So I ended the relationship, and I just didn't feel right. I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to figure this out? Not missing her, but just kind of in a state of, what am I doing? So I found a therapist here locally, great dude. And I went to him and I was like, look, I was in my 40s then. I was like, I've been through some things. I'm sure I have some unresolved trauma at this point. I just want some help in being the best Cory that I can be and give the world the best Cory I can give them for the next 10, 20, 30, 40, however many years I got left here. Can you help me with that?
Yeah, that takes a certain level of humbleness to do that.
Yeah.
Because most men were very prideful, and women, that, oh, I can figure it out myself.
That's the dumbest shit you can do. Swear to God.
So the fact that you came to that, that's really good.
We can't figure it out ourselves. There's no, if there was a way or some sort of roadmap that was the gospel of figuring out how to navigate through life, there would only be one version of it. But how many books are there that says you got chicken soup for the soul, 5 love languages, all this other stuff that tell you how to exist in life?
Right.
It's not, there is no one way, right? So I think part of the problem that we have as men is the pride thing. One of the, sometimes people say stupid things like, well, weak people go to therapy. You're weak. You're not strong. Well, no, you're the absolute strongest version of a human being to go.
Yeah, I would say the people who say that probably need it the most.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say next. Like, to dig down deep into that level of your soul and be like, help me, please. That takes balls. That takes guts. That takes the humbleness, like you said. So I went and talked to the dude, told him, I just want to be the best that I can be. And he was like, dude, I got you. So I went and saw him for about 1.5 years. And after 1.5 years, he was like, look, man, I love hanging out with you. I come once a week. I feel like I'm stealing from you now. Like, what do you mean? He was like, you have all the tools. You have all the skills. I've taught you everything that I know. You're doing very well with navigating through life, unless what you're telling me in these meetings isn't true. He was like, but I genuinely believe it is true, because it was. If you need me, just hit me up, call me, text me, stop by the office, leave your card on the door, and I'll call you back. But I think you're good.
Nice. Most therapists would be like, yep, keep come seeing.
Well, those are the wrong ones.
Yeah.
Because when you go to therapy, like, you shouldn't go to therapy for years. There should be a, quote, graduation date. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There should be.
Yeah.
Um,
If they haven't fixed you, then you
you
need to
need
find
to find
another.
another therapist. That's exactly right.
Well, asking for a friend, he's been going to the same one for 2 years.
Okay, well, he should be at the end
That's what I
of
thought.
his curriculum.
You
Okay,
don't go to college indefinitely.
No, well, you do, and you become an astronaut or a
Yeah.
physiotherapist, some
Yeah,
sort
yeah.
of triple MD. Anyway, yeah, he said you've graduated, you're good, and if you need me, let me know. And I've spoken to him probably. I stopped that in like mid 2022. I've talked to him maybe like 5 or 6 times since then.
Mm-hmm.
Just when things come up that I want to make a change in life, give me advice about how to handle a certain situation, things of that nature that I don't know the answer to. It's okay. We're not supposed to know the answer to everything, but
Yeah.
so yeah, he says reach out, and I do. We have either a quick 5-minute conversation. We do it through text, and I've seen him maybe like twice in person.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I think more people. I mean, they are pushing that now. Mental health, and there's BetterHelp.com and all other stuff, and so there is that. So I think that's good. I personally haven't gone to therapy myself. I probably need it, but it's great to hear that it was helpful for you.
Whether you go to therapy or not, here's just the realest issue is if you aren't the best that you can possibly be, you're not going to be the best for anybody else. If you're screwed up inside, you can't help anybody. You can't be the best person that you can be for the rest of the world. And if you truly are a decent human being, you want to give the rest of the world the best of you. Anything that you touch, everybody that you meet, you want them to get the best impression of you and give them the best Cory that you can possibly give them. And you can't do that if you're in turmoil.
Mm.
Or it's fake. You understand what I'm saying? It's not real. And people can see through that.
Yeah. I was talking to you about that CIA guy.
Yeah.
And so one thing that struck out to me that he said was so they're all about human psychology because they're trying to basically manipulate an asset to do what they want.
Yep.
And so he's like, there's 3 stages to human. There's their public life, their private life, and their secret life. And most people, you only see their public life. And as a CIA person, you're trying to get into their public, or trying to get to their private and eventually to their secret.
Yeah.
And I would say for men, how do we apply that in our situation? As men, you need people in your life that are aware of your private life so they know who you really are.
Yeah.
Because we all have our public persona because we want to present a version of yourself. And not everyone needs to know your private and secret life, but I think you should have people in your life that are aware of your private life.
Sure.
Secret, probably a super loved one, preferably a spouse. Not everyone needs to know all your dirty secrets.
Right.
But I think as men, we generally don't let people even into our private life.
Because there's insecurities with that. So if you are indeed a secure individual, you have a level of vulnerability about you. And
growing up, so in your adulthood, did you ever have like a group of guy friends that you could be?
Player teammates were, but okay. So if young men have to act a certain way, right? You got to be a tough guy. You got to be cool daddy. You got to be all that. As we have grown and we still stay in contact, our communication has transformed to different levels of vulnerability and openness.
Would you say you've been able to get into the private lives?
Absolutely.
Of these men?
Yes, but that's because we're open to it, because I've known you for 30 years. I know how you were. Tell me how you are. What's going on?
Yeah.
Right. And people aren't going to do that with you unless you're willing to do that with them. So it starts with like, for instance, me being open, and then one of my guys will be open as well. Right. So
yeah, and that's what I encourage people to do is have therapy's good for sure, but you also want to have a group of friends that you can work through things as well.
Sure. Absolutely. A brotherhood, if you will.
Yeah. And if you, again, going back to the guy, if you don't have life outside of your core relationship with your family and your work, that's a problem.
Yep.
If you don't have a group of guys that you can have a private life with, that's a problem.
Yep.
And then if you are, so me and Nancy talked about therapy, and she talked about the time she went to therapy, and she's like, we talked about therapy, the concept of it. Some people really, really need it because they're so screwed up. Not screwed up, but just they need someone to help them think through stuff.
Mhm.
She's like, I hated it. That's what she said. She hated therapy. And it's like some people don't have to go to it or need to go to it because they are able to make the adjustments that they need somehow.
Mhm.
That's not everyone. So that was interesting talking through that with her. She's like, yeah, my husband definitely needed it because he just, not only could he not be the best version of himself, he couldn't be even a good version of himself.
Sure.
But yeah, and you know who Jordan Peterson is?
Sure.
And so I like listening to him as well. I can only listen to small bouts. I'll listen to him for like a little bit, and then won't listen to him for like weeks because it's like my mind still hurts after.
He's pretty deep, man.
It's like my brain hurts for. It's like I got a really good mental workout, and then I'll come back to you in a month.
Yeah.
And he uses the term mental combat.
Yep.
And so the point of mental combat is me and you have a conversation. I may think or say something, thinking out loud. I hear you something, which keeps me in check of things that I'm thinking or saying. If you don't have that regularly throughout your life, then you're going to start believing some crazy ideas. Mm-hmm. So that's why you need healthy dialogue, healthy discussion, and it doesn't generally happen through text.
Right.
Doesn't happen through emails. That comes through one-on-one communication or group communication. But you have to go past the public life.
Yep.
You have to get into the private life to really have those meaningful conversations to not make you so crazy.
Well, how do you think that fits into today's society where we're in a situation where like socialization is going away and frowned upon?
It's not good. I think about this as well, and it's like, so we're the most connected, right? Because of social media,
Correct. Yeah.
We can essentially be super connected, but the one thing that technology can't replace is this.
Correct.
Right? And so with my kids, it's like they don't. So I let them like make highlights for their videos and they can post it on YouTube. That's it. But it's like they're literally showing studies now like how kids are so destroyed from social media.
Yeah.
Women or girls and boys, if they're getting on Instagram, on Facebook, and all that stuff, it's so mentally, because their mind's still forming, it destroys them.
Yeah.
Because their brains aren't meant to handle that much input. And so this will, as much as we like technology, you can't replace this.
Right.
I mean, they're going to try the AI girlfriends.
Yeah.
That's going to be a thing. AI boyfriends. That's all. Like, because you can get close to it,
mm-hmm.
but this,
you can't touch it.
You can't replace that because that's built inside of us to have this human.
That's what we're supposed to
human connection, and that's probably what led me to this, because it's like I listen to a lot of podcasts, but it's not, listening to one is different than actually doing it. Because when you're actually in it doing it, it's like, oh, I actually have to think critically about what he's saying, and not just, it just makes you think about stuff. And then the more I do it, the more I start thinking about other stuff. So it's fun. I enjoy it. I don't know if it's for everyone, but I would encourage people to have healthy conversations and dialogue
for sure
with people, because that's just being a human.
That's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah,
we all got here.
There's a guy in the sauna.
In the sauna story,
dude. I have so many sauna stories. But there's a guy in the sauna. He's in his 70s, and he has a 30-year-old son that still lives with him.
Okay.
And the dude, from a societal standpoint, as being productive, is total failure, and it's super sad. He's the guy still living in his mom's basement. Yeah. Doesn't work out. Doesn't have any social interaction outside of Twitter, texting. And so it's like, sure, you need professional help, but I think there's basic functions you need to do just to function. Like, if you're not doing the basic functions, then don't waste your time trying to, people are trying to optimize their life. Great. But do the broad strokes.
You can't skip the steps. Right?
Like, you still got to do the broad strokes, right? And that's what I'm trying to instill with my kids. It's like, with sports, with basketball, I just wanted them to get outside to play.
Yeah.
It just so happened that they ended up being slightly better than other people at basketball.
Yeah.
Cool. But it's not about the basketball. It was just about falling in love with movement.
So I think that to the point about the young man living with his father,
He's not even a young man. He's a grown man.
there's so much in this society about getting to the top, right? And there is no elevator. You can't take the elevator. You have to take the stairs, right? So you can't skip steps. So like, do something every day. Do something. Does he get up? Does he at least shower, brush his teeth, or is he just sitting there in the basement with his feet up? Like, that's
So he said
a recipe for disaster.
I was talking to the dad, and he said there's a day both him and his wife challenged him, and then after that challenge, he ended up staying in his room for 3 days.
So this kid, this man has some emotional trauma.
Yeah, he's got all sorts
going on.
He does need professional help for sure. But then I also tell people, like, you still got to do the basics, man. If you're not exercising, you're not getting sun, you're not doing the tenets of being a human, start there, right?
If they gave him tough love and said, you got a month to get your shit right or you're out of here, the last day of that month time frame, there may be a little progress. They'd have to kick him out. Now, the problem with that would be that person is not mentally suited to exist in society in any sort of mainstream level.
We even talked about that.
Danger. He's a danger.
We talked about that because it's like, he's like, I've thought about doing the tough love. Because it's like, the problem is he has no need or desire to do anything because he can just go back to his room.
Stop. Well, okay. So then are we in a situation where mom and dad are enabling it?
They are.
Okay.
They are. That's the problem. Because it's like, true failure means if I fail, I'm out on the street.
Correct.
But for him, if I fail,
I just go to my room and shut the door.
Yeah.
Send you a text to make me some Hot Pockets.
Yeah. And it's like, we use other language, but it was just like, he has to man up.
Yeah.
And,
well, somebody does.
And they're in their 70s.
Somebody does.
They're in their 70s, and it's like, you're not going to be around that much longer.
Right.
You have health issues. The wife has health issues.
Yeah.
So he's gonna, hopefully you can help him man up before you guys pass away, but.
Well, again, somebody needs to man up.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the son in this instance. I'm talking about the dad. Like, stop doing this shit. You can't, because it's not working. You're not helping him. Mm-hmm. What you're doing is giving him a license to continue on with this lackluster performance as a human being.
Yeah.
Somebody has to man up, because he's not going to do it himself. That's proven.
Yeah. We can wrap up soon, but I wanted to talk because you're dealing with teenagers.
Yeah.
We don't have to talk about your kids necessarily, but when you're dealing with do you interact with your kids' friends?
Yeah.
And so how is, because my kids are going to be teenagers, when people look at this generation that's coming up, they're like, this generation is just game over.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this generation that's coming up? What do you see in these kids?
So I think I'm lucky.
Sounds like your kids are doing all right, but I'm curious about
they've made, for the most part, really good decisions about the people that they associate themselves with.
Because are they Gen Z, your kids? Is there a whole nother?
I don't know what any of that shit is. My son is 6. My oldest daughter is 19. My son is 16, and my youngest daughter is 15. So
yeah, I think that's
whatever Gen Z. That's dumb. They're teenagers. But again, they've made good decisions with who they associate themselves and who they spend times with. A lot of it is because there are other kids who are playing sports and they don't have time to be screwing around and getting involved in the extra stuff. So most of them all have good grades. They handle their business. They're respectful young people who come into my home, and we spend time together, and they're cool kids. Mm-hmm. They've made good choices when it comes to that. And I think that I'm lucky because of that they have made good choices. And from the track record that I've seen, that will continue. Am I prepared for it not to? Sure, because shit happens, right? Everybody screws up once in a while, and we make bad choices. But the goal in life is to not make the same bad decision over and over again, right? You don't need to get hit in the head with a brick more than once to understand the brick hurts. So just been lucky with that.
Nice. Last thing is, when you're talking about your therapy, the thought that I've had is the sooner. So Tony Robbins likes to use the word recognizing patterns.
Sure.
The people who recognize the patterns, the faster and the soonest generally can
fix it,
but also use it to get crazy, whatever advantages,
it's
financial,
like a catapulting system.
Yeah.
Sure.
So he's like, because Jim Rohn was his mentor, and he learned stuff from him, and now Tony Robbins worth 500 mil. I like to use the word framework.
Okay.
The sooner you can adopt different type of frameworks, the sooner you can operate within that. So like with you, when you went to therapy, he helped give you a framework to operate under. And so when I think about helping young people, you don't necessarily have to believe my framework, just have a framework, and maybe you grow out of that framework.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily hard rules. It's just operating within a certain, I don't know what the term is, but for me, framework is, it's like, now I understand like how muscle, like I used to weigh more than I would have liked. Then I went and learned about fat loss and muscle gain and all that stuff. Now I have a framework around that to help me actually maintain my weight. That's more scientific. So it's like, there's a more efficient way. There's a more right way. But when it comes to life, there's probably different frameworks. There's probably some frameworks that if you do this, you'll get probably a higher financial gain.
Sure.
But I think the people that don't have any frameworks, then they're just kind of floundering around
willy-nilly.
And so that's the thing that I'm trying to get people to adopt is Tony Robbins says, recognize patterns. I'd like to say try to adopt a framework, and then usually from someone that's already done the thing. And then over time, you can so his whole thing is learn from someone that's done it. So he learned from Jim Rohn.
Right.
And then over time, he was able to create his own.
Right.
But you have to at least learn from someone that's done the thing. And then just literally, if you like the hack in life, steal from someone else's 10,000 hours, which is kind of what I'm doing when I'm doing these conversations. When I talk to Nancy, right? She's double my age.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to steal from her life experience. I didn't have to go live those 35 years additional to learn some of those things from her life.
Right.
Or your marriage, your divorce. I hopefully never have to go through the divorce, but I can steal from that experience that you had.
Sure.
And then apply it to my life.
So I think that I like the idea of the framework. So say you set out a framework for yourself and you get involved in that and you accomplish everything in there the way that you need to do it in that piece of framework. Part of our evolution and growing as human beings and getting better would be moving on to another set of frameworks and going from framework to framework to framework. And really, I mean, if you're doing it right and you have consistency and you want to be growth minded and to be the best you can be, that would never stop. Right. So the continual growth process through the frameworks, framework to framework to framework. And it's really a never ending process. So they put dirt on you.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to I think when a lot of times when people think growth, it's financial.
It's not.
And it's not.
You don't get financial growth if you don't grow the other parts of your life first. That's a fact.
Yeah.
That you may have some money, but if you're not prepared for it, guess what? It's out the window. You trick it off on cars, houses, women, whatever it may be, right? There's your financial growth down the window because you weren't emotionally and mentally grown enough to know what to do with it. So the emotional and mental growth, the spiritual growth, the quote, personal growth leads to the financial growth, the actual growth, the growth that matters with the finances. You can drive around in fancy cars and all that stuff, but the true value isn't the car. The value is the person who's driving it.
Right. So it's like if you're a young person, you don't have to have life figured out. just go find someone that probably has figured it out more than you.
Yeah.
And just steal from them.
Even a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Steal from them. Be like, all right, and you don't even have to know the why.
Yep.
It's nice to know the why, but just steal it from them.
Just see that person had the result that you want.
Yeah.
How did you get there? Okay, I'm going to do that exact same thing. That's all you got to do.
And then over time, like you said, you'll customize just like Tony Robbins, when he listened to Jim Rohn, he then started using his own verbiage.
Correct.
And I'm seeing like that's literally the hack to life. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to figure everything out. Like there's a quote that Jim Rohn said. He's like, if you want something in life, go read a book. Because someone's already written about how they got successful. Someone's already written about their life. Someone's already written about blah, blah. Go steal from that guy. I mean, you can go try to figure it out yourself. And there are people like that. There are the innovators, the Elon Musk, someone argued Elon wasn't an innovator. He just knew how to really push people. That's a different conversation. But it's like, yeah, dude, the hack to life is to go learn knowledge or a framework or something from someone else and just make it your own.
If the roadmap to what success you're looking for has already been laid out, you don't need to draw another map. Go to your Google Maps, whatever it is, and take that road. Because you know what the end result is if you do what that person did. Right?
And I think that's the struggle for young people is they don't adopt a framework. And then they're just kind of bumbling through life until something forces them to, an injury, something really negative.
Sure.
So here's something I was thinking about. A lot of times people go to help, they go get help when things are bad.
Yeah.
But it's like, AA have sponsors or whatever. And so there's couples that I know that are about to get married. And what would be really beautiful is you get married and you have people actually sponsor you to help you through your marriage.
Yeah.
Not come to them when things are bad.
Right.
But actually help you. I mean, that's literally mentorship. That's discipleship. That's literally like, if you want to help the next generation, go hold their hand so that when they get in that first fight, they already have someone there to support them versus 6 years in, we hate each other. Why do we hate each other? Well, by then it's probably too late. And let's help the next generation come up. But it's hard. How do you help someone that doesn't know they need help? Doesn't ask for help? Because I'm talking to these older people. Some of them are like, yeah, I am willing to help generations younger than me, but no one's coming to me. And that's part of the podcast, is to gap that bridge.
Yeah.
Make it normal for them. Because I went up to a lady at the Y. She was in her 60s. And she didn't know the last time she talked to someone my age. And actually had a meaningful conversation.
That's unfortunate.
And I was like, that's sad. Because she was like pleasantly surprised. Again, I get I'm not white, I'm not normal. But like, she enjoyed the conversation because I don't do like, oh, did you see the Seahawks? Blah, blah. Like, we had a really meaningful conversation for 20 minutes. And I was telling her some of the things that like are current cultural beliefs. And she's like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And she was actually, we won't get to the political part, but after the conversation, I was like, I highly encourage you to go interact with younger people, because young people are great, right? They have a lot of piss and vinegar, right? Whether you're male or female, but sometimes you get some crazy ideas that need to be checked, right? And so that's why we need the older generation, not to necessarily tell you what to do, but to be like, hey, that's an interesting idea, but let's play that out and see where that goes. And that's what we're failing right now to do in current society and culture is, as a parent, your job the first 18 years is to guide them through life. Like, why do I make my kid go to bed at a certain time? Why do I not let them eat candy all day? Yeah. Because I know if I do let them do that, it's going to be a bad outcome for them. So we understand that from 0 to 18. But once you get past 18, go figure life out.
So I think what you're talking about is a phrase that I like to say called direction through suggestion.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Can't make you do anything, but I can tell you this may be the wrong path. You may want to do this. You can do what you want.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about a story that happened to me.
Yeah.
Right? Direction through suggestion. And maybe it resonates with them to where when XYZ situation pops up, they're like, oh, direction through suggestion.
Yeah.
That's all we can do.
So that's what I want to encourage. It's like when I talk to old people, I'm like, dude, please go interact. And you can do it. You don't have to be this, like if you go up to a young person, if you go up to anyone in general, and you tell them, hey man, you're all jacked up, they're not going to respond.
No, that's the wrong way.
Right?
To do it. Yeah.
So like you said, you got to do it on more on the side. Come from the side and shank them. Right.
Well, also, it's more of the approach of softness, kindness, helping. Not anybody's going to be defensive if you come at them a certain way.
Yeah.
Right?
If I came up to you,
and you're like, hey man, listen. Right there, it just calms everything and soothes everything, right? It comes from more of an empathetic type of frame.
Mm-hmm.
So it's better to do it that way than to look you dumb.
Yeah.
Right.
So like what we need is we need guys like you and I think you are already doing it, to interact with guys with their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
Because we don't do that. And then we need, because I was talking to my dude a friend that's in his 30s, and he's like, dude, it's hard for me to relate to a guy in his 70s. Which is like, all right, I mean, that's a personal thing. You still should be able to interact with him. But he's like, it is slightly easier for me to interact with someone in their 50s. And so it's like, yeah, let's do that in such a way. Let's make that normal. Let's make that natural.
Sure.
But again, I'm too hopeful to think that everyone's just going to start doing that. But it's like, we need to do that.
Well, I think that we need to do that now in the day and age that we're living in right now more than ever, because we are definitely getting into a situation where the divisiveness is rampant amongst us, and it's growing. So, we need to start bridging the gap of the
I don't even know where you land politically. Maybe we're on totally different ends.
independent.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. And I think more like this is an election year, so the one guy I've already done a podcast with, he's come up to me and had different ideas of like, okay, maybe I can get some guys together and we can talk about that stuff and just show like, okay, maybe 2% of things we disagree on, but the other 98% we still share, right? As far as like love, relationship, all this other, there's like 99% of the other things we all kind of want the same thing. It's just this 1%.
That's the thing that you say, because I've said this for many years. We all want the same thing. We all, at the end of the day, want to be loved. We all want to be able to take care of our families at the highest level. We all want just to be happy. So there's more commonalities with us than there are uncommonalities. We all want those things. So with the political aspect of things, I want my assets and my money to be protected. Stay away from my money, government, IRS, all that kind of stuff. But with the socialization people and socially, you can do whatever you want to do. I don't care. It's perfectly fine. Put any acronym, alphabet, letter, anything you want after your name. I don't care. That's perfectly fine. That's where I sit. I'm always going to vote for the person who I think is going to do the best job to put myself, my family, and the country in the best position, period. I don't care if they're Democrat. I don't care if they're Republican. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is people fail to think critically anymore. And when it comes to politics, it's they'll throw reason out the window.
Sure.
And it's like, socially, sometimes people will tend to be more on the Democratic side, but then when it comes to the financial side, they're like, "Oh, I like the Republican part of it."
I do like that the aspect of protecting our money. Right. I do like that. Do I get down with everything that the Republicans have to say? No, but I also don't get down with everything that the Democrats
and that's where it's like
say.
the two-party system is tough because it's hard for people to accept both of them. But
correct.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But to the listener, it's like, dude, like, just go talk to people.
Yeah.
And get outside. Like, we talked about knowing thyself.
Yep.
But know thyself by interacting with other people.
You can learn so much from having a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, you can read a book. I do them all. I read the books. I listen to the podcasts. But I think ever since I started doing this, my growth personally, exponential. It's crazy.
That's awesome.
And ever since I've And again, I've already done a ton of like I love listening to podcasts. Like when I work out, I'm listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
If I'm listening to, I don't. I guess the only nonfiction in my life is if I'm like watching a TV show at night. But other than that, it's usually like I'm washing dishes. I'm listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
But this is fun, and I don't think people do it enough.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend. It may be uncomfortable. You may not be a great communicator. You don't have to record it.
Yeah.
But do this. Do it with people outside of your family.
Sure.
Just go talk to a stranger. You never know.
The more you do it, the easier it gets and the better you get at it.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. But
right on, man.
I'll see you around.
Yeah.
Well, last thing. So let's talk about your fitness journey.
Yeah.
So that's where we met. Basketball. Did you just stay into fitness after that, or kind of?
No, there was years where I didn't do anything but eat whatever I wanted.
Did you gain weight? Did you get?
Yeah. So great question. So when I told you about when I did the patella tendon, after that happened, I got up to 270 pounds. I'm about 6'5", big boy, right? And it got to a point where I was like, God, I got to do something about this. So I started doing something. I started going to the gym and slowly started losing weight and changing the diet. And I just didn't really have it all figured out yet, because that journey, the fitness journey, there's no magic pill. It's not just going to click. Everybody's different, right? So it took me many years to figure out how my body works, what it needs, and the best way for me to operate. So I stopped lifting heavy weights. Don't do that anymore. More calisthenics, lightweight stuff. I don't really run. I do walk on the treadmill once in a while, but I jump rope with a weighted jump rope. I do that about 3 or 4 times a week. And
so what do you weigh now?
228, 220.
So you lost 50 pounds.
In about 5 years. Yeah. 6, 7 years.
Good for you. And what do you think, what were the big stroke steps that helped you do that?
So I'm just going to be really upfront with you. Diet is a huge part of it. Exercise is not so much of a part of it. It's the other stuff that you have in your life. So I noticed once I started removing myself from stress, toxic situations, and not having, what's the chemical? There's a chemical, cortisol. Once you reduce that cortisol, your body is free to remove all of that weight. Stress, turmoil, angst, all that kind of stuff does not help you in your fitness journey. So some of the healthiest, fittest people in the world have the most free stress, low stress type lifestyles. And then they happen to work out, and then they have some genetics, or they take supplements and things like that. So I really started losing the weight once I became, I guess, for lack of a better term, stress-free. I was still working out and I was making progress. But once the stress and the drama and all that stuff left, I mean, like overnight, it was like a pound a day.
So fitness is a big thing for me, because I also look at, not just from me personally, but I look at America, it's getting fatter.
Sure.
So I'd love to hear stories like that, where it's like, because a lot of times people will get to a certain point and think I can't change.
Yeah. Well, okay, don't, and you're going to die.
Yeah.
Simple. We've talked about this. Large people don't live to be 70 and 80. They're like gang members or criminals, right?
What was your mindset when you were 270?
You're going to not be around.
So that was the pain that it
you're
took.
Around, but you're not going to.
That was.
But you're not going to veer.
So that was the pain that because usually someone needs a catalyst.
Yeah, it was the thought of, if I keep on like this, I'm not going to make it to 50. I'm not going to make it to 60. One thing I also did is I stopped eating a bunch of meat. So I'm like 85, 90% plant-based.
So where do you get your protein?
So different things like tofu. Vegetables have plenty of protein. You don't need meat for protein. That's an absolute fallacy. Where do the animals that you eat get the protein from, right?
Dude, we gotta have a whole podcast on that.
Okay, so they don't.
It's part 2.
They don't. Legumes, beans, there's many sources of protein.
Are you conscious about your protein intake?
No.
So no.
I'm more conscious about what I eat, on the level of what it's doing to nourish my body. And it just so happens that the things that I eat do just fine for me. I don't really think that we need a whole bunch of protein. I'm not trying to put on a bunch of weight. So I'm not drinking protein shakes and drinking shredded chicken in a blender. I'm not doing any of that stuff. I don't want that. So I have my own beliefs on this stuff, and like I said, I only know what works for me. I don't
That's the
consume a whole
point.
bunch of protein.
Yeah. Well, you look great,
Thank
and I think that can be inspirational for people because a lot of times once people get to a certain point, then they're like, it's too late.
Yeah,
Nothing I can do. I can't change.
Well, you can change it until they shut that lid on you. You know what I mean? Then you can't change it.
Yeah.
So I didn't want them to shut the lid on me without me seeing some things.
And how do you feel now versus when you were like, what was the mindset that you had when you were 270 and you looked at yourself in the mirror?
I mean, great question. So when you are in that kind of situation physically and mentally, because there's two parts to it, you don't look in the mirror because you don't like the way you look. You don't look at yourself.
So you kind of hate yourself.
And an aspect of that, yeah, you do. You're not proud of
I've never
yourself.
been that big.
You're not happy with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, you shave, but you're just like this, and you probably shave with the shirt on so that you don't have to see your titties jiggle, right? I'm just telling you the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you don't like yourself, and when you don't like yourself, you can't look yourself in the mirror.
Yeah. Well, you look fantastic now.
You're doing all right.
I'm sure you'll find a strapping young lady that
strapping young lady. No, well, to that point, I don't go out there looking for it, right? I think that as men, we waste a lot of time chasing that, and instead we should be chasing excellence. So once you get to a level where you're doing really well financially, you're mentally and physically healthy, guess what happens? They come knocking. You don't even got to chase them.
Yeah.
Simple.
Well, good. I think that sums it up for today, but really good information.
Cool.
I know it's going to have an impact on both male and female listeners, but you can be inspired. Like, getting old doesn't have to suck.
No.
You can learn, you can adopt, you can change. You've done it mentally, you've done it physically.
Yeah.
And, I'm excited to see what the future has for you.
I know, man.
But I'll see you around.
Sounds good.